Welcome, Notre Dame fans, to another edition of the Irish Breakdown Podcast. I am Vince D'Addario. I am the football analyst here at irishbreakdown.com. That guy right there is Brian Driscoll. He is the publisher at irishbreakdown.com. And it's Friday. And if you can read along the bottom there, you'll know that it is a Friday free-for-all mailbag. Best day of the week. All right. So we're going to get into our Friday free-for-all as we always do. And really looking forward to it. But we have an announcement that we want to make about one of our shows. We got a special show coming up, Brian. So why don't you tell the folks out there what we're going to be doing next week?
So I just want to say we have been incredibly blessed at Irish Breakdown. And when you look at just the growth we've had in 2 years, the fact that we survived the pandemic, not only that, but we grew during the pandemic. We've started this platform. We have our podcast. We've got all these different platforms, and we've been very blessed and very fortunate. And there's a lot of people out there that aren't. And so one of the challenges for us is how do we use our platform to not only put out a great product, but also to help people when the time is there. And I've had a conviction the last week or so about, there's a lot of people in our community that need help. And so what we're going to do is we're going to use our platform to have a really fun Thanksgiving fundraiser mailbag. And so on Wednesday, this upcoming Wednesday, so 5 days from now, right?
Yep.
We're going to have a mailbag on Wednesday. So we're going to move our shows around. We're going to have our normal Monday, normal Tuesday. Then on Thursday, we're going to do our second stacking up of Georgia Tech. And then Friday will be our game prediction show. On Wednesday, we're going to have our mailbag. And what we're going to do that day, and there's a couple things that we're working on. We're going to have more particulars for you on Monday on the website, and then we'll talk about it on the show. But essentially what we're going to do is we're going to push for super chat, something we don't do. We don't push for super chats. We don't ask for super chats. If you want to give them, you give them. But what we're going to do is that day we're going to push for super chats, and every single penny that we earn. Now Google's going to keep their cut, right? There's nothing we can do about that. But
Right.
We're going to every single penny that we earn that day on super chats. I've already talked to several homeless shelters and faith-based missions in the community that serve the underprivileged local community, and we're going to go out and do shopping for their Thanksgiving list. And I mean, I've been given a list of plenty of things, turkeys, a lot of different things that people need. And this year, the cost of turkey and the cost of products is a lot higher than it is in normal years. So that makes it even more challenging for them to be able to have the things that they need. And so there's still a great need in our community. And so we're going to ask all of you to help us out, to help us really reach out and use and have the Irish Breakdown family and community to reach out and help those in the South Bend area that have a need. And so we're going to try to get like a donation page on Irish Breakdown that you can give. And it, doesn't get 35% or whatever taken away from Google. And it would not be tied to a membership. It's not a backdoor way to get you to sign up for the site. It's not like a free membership comes with it. It's just, if you want to help, you can help. And if you don't, and that's okay too, right? There's no judgment there. But the people that want to help and are able to help, we're going to try to help. So that's our way of giving back, and that's our way of using this platform that we've been blessed with, that you all have helped us grow in a way that we can impact our community. And we would do some of these things from time to time for different events like this. And so we have a few things planned, but this is going to be our first shot at really trying to do this, step up and really help out our community. So, so there's other types of things that we're going to do. And to answer a question here from Blaine, so this is awesome. Just to ask, would you be willing to accept funds in other ways, such as Venmo, to higher percents direct to you guys? So we're working on that. Okay. That is something that we're working on, but it's just, we have to figure out a way to make sure that it's not tied to memberships and some different types of things. Because the one thing that I spoke with Angela about last night was, hey, you could do something where if you donate X amount of dollars, you get a free membership. That to me comes across as we're trying to use this as an opportunity to gain memberships, which then means you're going to get charged in a year from now for a membership. And we don't want to do that. We want to make this strictly about being able to help. So Blaine, we are working on a way to where if you don't want to do a super chat, we'll have a site open that day that you can just give directly. And then also I'm all about transparency. So what we do is on our analytics for YouTube, we can actually look and see how much money we make from that show. We're going to screenshot that and we're going to let everybody know. Okay. And then Vince and I are actually going to do the shopping. And so we're going to have some fun with it. We're going to go out. We're going to get the list from the different shelters of the things that we need. We're going to buy it. We're going to, take photos. We'll show you all the receipts just to make sure that that the money you give is going to where we say it's going to go to.
It's not going to the Brian and Vince vacation fund.
We also didn't just want to give the money to a shelter because we wanted to make sure that the money was going directly to the people that have the need. And the best way to do that is to buy the items that they need. And so we will also, when we put this out on Monday, we will let you know exactly who we're giving to.
Right. Exactly.
And because I believe if we're going to do something like this, it needs to be open and out there so people know exactly what they're getting into. I don't know yet if we're going to be able to offer tax write-off. We're working on all that stuff. So we will let you know exactly what you're doing, who you're giving it to when that time comes. But I just wanted to give everybody a heads up that we're going to do that because this is really something that's been on my heart. And then when Vince and I talked about it, he was immediately on board. And this is something we want to do. And we know that there will be some people out there that want to do that. So that's what we're going to do. And so I look forward to the IB community stepping up on Wednesday and helping out.
Because a lot of people like to give around this time of year, which is awesome. And so if you're looking for a place to give, because look, there's places that are great to give, and then there's places that are okay to give. And we want to give the opportunity to give to what we're doing because it's all going, it's all of it, is going to where it needs to go. And we want to give that opportunity out to everybody because it's, it's kind of our foundation. We are not afraid to tell people, what we believe and how we stand by it. And we're honest and all that fun stuff. And so this is something we're called to do. Yeah. It's an extension to who we are and how we want to operate in our lives. And if we can use this platform, then that's what we want to do.
And if you don't want to give, that doesn't mean you can't be there on the Wednesday show and you can't ask questions, because not everybody's able and that's okay. But this is what we're going to do. So, so that's what we're going to do. So I look forward to it. I look forward to everybody being a part of it, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So that's going to be this upcoming Wednesday. So 5 days, the Wednesday before the Georgia Tech game is when we will have that mailbag. And like I said, we'll have more about it next week. We'll have something on the website and we'll have all those kind of things. So, but that's not what people came here for today, Vince. People came here today to talk Notre Dame football. So
you're darn right they did.
You ready to get to it?
Ready. We got a couple super chats right off the bat. And so why don't we get to those first, and then we'll go right back up to the top. Justin, thank you, Justin Herwick, for your super chat. Really appreciate it. He says, is Wagner / Zach Martin a fair player comp? Do you think ND will be good at defensive end in 2022? Go IB and go Irish.
So, Justin, that's a good question. I've asked a lot of people to ask about about the Emil Wagner comps. I have not heard Zach Martin before. That's an interesting one. That's not one that I would use for several reasons. Number one is Emil Wagner's way longer than Zach Martin was. That's why Zach Martin moved to guard in the NFL, is he just didn't have that ideal length to be a tackle, and he's been a phenomenal guard. Emil's more of a long-limbed, perimeter player. I think they were both athletic guys. I think Zach had even more power than Emil did, and Zach had a better frame. You kind of knew Zach would get up to 290 plus and be able to carry it. The question was, could he get up to 300, 305? And he has. I think of a Notre Dame comp of the last decade, I think Mike McGlinchey's a good comp. Somebody brought up on the message board, Ryan Harris, and I didn't really remember Ryan Harris as a prospect. So I actually reached out to Tim Priester and was like, hey, what do you think of this comparison? And he thought it was a good one based on Ryan at the time. Because, again, I can't answer the question. I don't remember Ryan Harris as a high school prospect. I only remember him as a Notre Dame player. People have talked about Tyron Smith. There's some similarities there. Austin Jackson, some similarities there. But any comp that's long, athletic, and has strong hands is going to be a good comp for me.
Joe Alt, is he kind of a comp?
No, I don't think so, because I always thought there are some areas, but I think a lot of the things people are looking for when the comps, and I guess maybe it's just me, I'm focusing in on people had questionable frames. I never had a question. I never questioned that Joe Alt would grow. Question was how long would it take?
Yeah, right.
And so somebody asked me about that, and I said, the only surprise that I have about Joe Alt is how quickly it came. I gave him a 4.5-star upside grade, which is the grade of a top 50 overall national recruit.
Yeah.
So I'm not surprised that Joe's turned into a good player. I'm shocked that it happened in year one. That's where I'm surprised.
Right.
By.
Absolutely.
But he always had the thick frame. He always had that kind of that country boy body. The broad shoulders. You always knew he would get there. Just thought it would take a little longer.
And lineage helped too.
So I understand why people are going with the Joe Walt, but I have genuine concerns about whether or not Emil can add that kind of weight and carry it well. But that's honestly my only concern with him. He's going to need to get taught technique and all those type of things. And we talked about that yesterday, but the athleticism, the power, the length, those are all really top 100 level skills, in my opinion.
Okie dokie. All right. You want to go? I have little kids. What can I say?
All righty then.
If you want to keep grabbing super chats, I'll stay at the top.
Yeah, sounds good. What?
I don't know.
I'll read this one from Q Kibbs because Vince needs to compose himself.
It's been one of those days already, man.
Sharing my payday with you guys. Thank you for that, Q Kibbs. I want to help Brian pay for all the beanies Reese wants when he puts Buckner in the diamond formation beanie. Hashtag beanie fun. Oh, man.
He's loving the beanies the last couple of games.
Yeah. Well, I made a comment that if they line up in the diamond formation with Tyler Buckner quarterback, I'm going to buy Tom Reese all the beanies he wants. So we actually have beanies on the Irish Breakdown merch store.
It's a fact.
So I'm going to have to use all the special orders I get every month, the discounted orders, to buy Coach Reese some beanies.
That's funny. You should send him one, see if he wears it.
Yeah, I have to deliver like, hey, this is me paying for, I'm a man of my word. I said, if you put Tyler Buckner in the diamond formation, I would buy you all the beanies you want, even though you make way, way, way more money than I do.
Yeah, right.
Here's your beanies.
Yeah.
So they gave up on the van fund, right? They gave up on that.
Yeah,
so now we're going to start the beanie fund for Coach Reese. I love it. All right. Mike Gardner says, just because you guys are thinking like this. Thank you for that super chat, Mike. And
thanks, Mike.
I think he's referring to the thing we're doing on Wednesday.
Absolutely.
Tommy Gunn says, you guys are such beautiful souls. We appreciate that.
It's BEA beautiful.
Okay,
souls.
then.
Come on,
See,
man.
that's why you need to be reading these, Vince. So, but no, I appreciate that, Tommy. Appreciate that. But it won't be us that really gets this done. Oh, and I was going to say this. We will provide, the Irish Breakdown will provide the first donation to that too. And we'll show everybody what that was, just to, because again, we're not going to sit there and say, well, you guys need to give. We're not. I got to save up for my Thanksgiving.
Get on it.
So we'll be there. But there won't be any kind of like match or anything like that. Or, I don't. I have a feeling the IB community is going to come through in a big way, and I don't think I can afford to match that. I'm not going to roll like that. So, but I appreciate that.
Good thought, though.
I appreciate that very much. Yeah. So you're back at the top, Vince. Let's get to some comments and questions.
All right, here we go. Well, we always got to start off with Tommy, because Tommy he brings it every day. He brings it. IB Nation, what up? All right. Question. Here we go. Coleman Smith. Do y'all think Kyle Hamilton has played his last game in a Notre Dame uniform? I don't think so.
And
that's
based
my
on
opinion.
Brian Kelly's comments yesterday,
Right.
I don't think he thinks so.
And
I think it's going to all depend on what the family decides to do.
For sure. But I feel like they've been in communication with the family. I mean, it would be silly if they weren't. And Brian Coach Kelly went to the mat on this. Like, he doesn't usually go that hard on something. You know what I mean? Like
his comments yesterday were super interesting.
Yeah, agreed.
Because
he didn't keep it vague at all.
I felt like he was kind of, and this is just 100% pure my opinion. I could be completely wrong. I felt like he was kind of lobbing a bit of a grenade at the family, and I don't necessarily have a problem with that.
Right.
And the reason I say that is he has changed his tune, where he was like, hey, Kyle's going to have to do whatever Kyle feels is best for him and his family. We support it. And now he's like, Kyle wants to play. This is a kid that wants to play.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like you have the team and Kyle on one side, and then Kyle's family on the other side.
That's a good point.
And I don't mean this as a shot at his family, because they're looking out for their son.
Of course.
And trying to say, hey, look, he wants to play. Let's figure out a way to make it happen. We'll work with you on this, but he wants to play.
Yeah,
and this is not a season-ending injury.
Right.
And so I feel like the comment he made yesterday is like the family wants more. There's more doctors getting involved. That's not because of Notre Dame. Brian
Right.
Kelly's football staff already has the doctors that they know and want. This is saying this is the
And good
family
ones
wanting
too.
second and third and fourth opinions and things like that. That's just my read of the situation.
Sure.
And it sounds that it was quite interesting.
It
the
was. I was
response. So
shocked that he went that, because you and I have talked about it before.
yeah.
We figured that, he's going to keep it kind of vague, and if they
Yeah.
decide to keep him out, it'll be, hey, he's just not cleared, that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And it doesn't sound like that's the case right now.
Yeah.
You're right.
It was interesting. He
I
took
see
a
your line of
completely
thinking.
different tune, and I could be
Yeah.
wrong. Again, that's just my
absolutely.
and it sounds. I mean, to me, it also seems like him and Kyle have talked. Kyle has told him he wants to play, and he's trying to,
right. And he's
again,
like, hey, coach.
could be completely misreading that. That's like I said, this is just my opinion. That's just 100% my opinion on the subject. We do have a couple more super chats here, Vince.
Yeah, we did.
Justin Horwick, he did ask this question before on the previous super chat, Vince, and we completely forgot to ask it. So
Justin,
I feel bad about that, but I appreciate
chat.
the super chat again, Justin. Do you think Notre Dame will be good at DN in 2022? Go IB and go Irish. Beat those Wahoos.
Justin will be back, right?
Justin Adamiola?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Isaiah Foskey, we hope, is back, but that's kind of up in the air, I would imagine.
Now, here's the reason I think that I may lean more towards he's going to be back than I did before.
Okay.
Is because as you look at this draft class, it's a really deep edge draft class. And he's going to have to be jockeying for position for guys who had like 2-3 seasons of Kayvon Thibodeau, George Karlaftis, Drake Jackson. I mean, there's Majay Sanders. I mean, it is a DeMarvin Leal. It is a deep, deep edge class.
Yep.
He may say, hey, look, come back. Aiden Hutchison is going to, so you come back and then your game even grows more. They'll know how to maybe use you even more effectively. And then next year you can go out and be a top 15 pick. That may be the pitch that Notre Dame can use to get him back. But let's just say he leaves. I think I think we all agree if Isaiah Foskey's back, they're going to be good at defensive end.
Right. It definitely helps. Yes, absolutely.
But let's just assume he's not back. Okay. You've got Jordan Patelho's got to step into that role. And I think by his junior year, he should be good there. And he does some things differently than Isaiah Foskey. It's kind of like comparing Julian Okwara to Dalen Hayes. Foskey's sort of a better version of Julian Okwara, and Patelho is more in the Dalen Hayes mold of a player, but maybe a better passer. He's athletic. He can drop into coverage, that kind of thing. Now, he's got to become more disciplined as a player, but the physical tools are there. Yep. Plus, you have strong side end. You have Justin Adamiola, who could play Viper or big end. I mean, that's the thing about Justin is he can kind of fit in wherever the need is.
Yeah, because he's been both this year. I mean,
and he's been both in. So Justin could play either side. So it could kind of be like, hey, Justin, we need you to start over here, or we need you to start over there. Right. You've got Nano Safa-Mensah's been in the rotation this year. He'll be back. You've got Alexander Ahrensberger's only going to get better and better and better. I mean, him playing this year is a year before I thought he'd be able to help out, and he's played well when he's got on the field.
Agreed.
And then you look at some of the younger guys that, maybe when you go to 3 down, maybe there's a role for Riley Mills to bump out a little bit more maybe than he has this year. And then you look at some of the younger players. For me, I'm really thinking that Tyson Ford's going to be hard to keep off the field next year. If he's as good as I think he's going to be, maybe Aiden Gabera can help out. I mean, that freshman class is going to help out too.
Sure.
So, yeah, I think it'll be good at end. I think it's just going to be like this year. I mean, look, Mike Ellison deserves a little bit of the benefit of the doubt that he's going to get that group rolling.
I think so.
Because he's done it every year.
Absolutely.
They lose. Even in season, even you look at 2019, they lost Dalen Hayes early. They lost Julian Okwara at one point in time. So what does he do? Hey, Jameer Jones, go out there and be a monster.
Right.
And play great. And, he finished incredibly strong. And then those guys all leave. And then 2020, it's Hayes and Ogundiji, and they leave. And this year it's Myron and it's Foskey. It's just like, it really doesn't seem to matter who Mike Ellison throws out there, defensive end. He gets those guys playing well. And I think they'll have talent next year as well. So, yeah, I think they'll be good at defensive end in 2022. How good? That remains a legitimate question. But I think they'll be good. Yeah, I think they'll be good. I think they'll at least be good against the run. The question that I would have is I don't know if like Nana doesn't strike me as the pass rusher that Myron is. At least he hasn't shown it yet, Can that change next year? We'll find out, but those would be the questions is, are they going to be as good at the pass rush as they are this year? That remains to be seen. But at the very least, I expect them to be very good against the run next year.
Okay. Do we have another super chat?
We do.
I think we
just
might.
got one from Brian Hazen saying pitching in. I appreciate that very, very, very much.
Absolutely. All right. Is that it?
That is it.
Okay. All right, cool. We'll go back up to the top. Chad Stewart. Brian, I hear you talk about how Notre Dame struggles with mobile quarterbacks. Which D coordinator do you think handles mobile quarterbacks well, or does it come down to just having great athletes on defense?
Well, Dave Aranda's had some successful games in the past with mobile quarterbacks. And so I would really want to study what he does and really look, because maybe I'm just misremembering that, but I remember them having a lot of success against Lamar Jackson in a bowl game. And I think Dave Aranda was at LSU at the time. Now I'm thinking about that. I'm going to have to look that up. But, I'd have to sit there and look at it. I think I think the thing for me is when I think of struggles, I think of consistent struggles. Yeah. Everybody's going to struggle with mobile quarterbacks from time to time, right? I mean, you look at Pitt this year. At times this year, Pitt's had some issues with mobile quarterbacks, and at other times they've done a pretty good job against mobile quarterbacks. And so it just depends on that particular game plan. But I think for Notre Dame, the issue has been it's been a consistent thing. And it's been a consistent problem, which is just not tackling well in recent seasons. Great. So I think that's part. But, Chad, I'd have to really think and go through and look and see who has it. Look, and part of the reason that you want to get mobile quarterbacks is because they're harder to defend.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yes.
And so everyone's going to have some issues with it. It's not a unique problem to Notre Dame. It's just for Notre Dame, it's been a little bit more consistent, and they haven't really been able to find any answers in most instances for mobile quarterbacks. And it seems like whenever they try one thing, it kind of makes them vulnerable to another thing, and that's kind of been a little bit of the challenge that they've had.
Hey, Brian, I'm going to throw up the next question. I have to take this phone call, so I will be right back. But here we go. Good. Coleman Smith, I'll let you handle that, and I will be right back.
So, Coleman, I don't really have I don't know who the next commit's going to be if we're going to talk 2023 class. I think for me, when I look at the 2022 class, I think if I had to guess, I would say be Billy Schrauth. I think Billy Schrauth would be the next guy that I project to commit, but his whole recruitment's been kind of strange. Like, he was silently committed to Notre Dame at one point early. That went away. I think they're leading again now, but there's like no buzz about he's going to do it Thursday or anything like that. So I really don't know what Billy is waiting on. I don't know if there's hesitancy about certain things. I really don't know what the holdup is. So I would say he would be the next one to commit. And then, of course, Xavier Nwankpa is going to make his decision in December. Notre Dame's still in a dogfight there. I like where they are more than maybe I don't know what other people think. I've heard that there's not a lot of optimism from some circles about him going to Notre Dame, or there's more optimism with Iowa or whoever. I like where Notre Dame is at with him, and I think that's going to be Chris O'Leary making a big splash. I'm actually going to have an article about that here later today about Chris O'Leary's opportunity to make a big splash in recruiting in 2022 and 2023 and what that's going to look like and what that could look like. So I would probably say Billy Schrauth. There's another question down here about recruiting that talked about Sonny Styles, and it kind of along the same lines. Let me just find that question. Give me 1 second, folks, because it was a long. I want to pull it up so people can see it and get to it. Here we go. From Michael Brahoni, any news on the Sonny Styles front? Any closer to committing after being recruited by Drake Bowling this past weekend? I don't think. I think 2023 is where we maybe could see the next commit come from. It's not necessarily Sonny, though. I think Sonny's going to decide sooner rather than later, meaning I don't see him waiting until like next fall, next summer. I think he'll probably, this is just my read of the situation, I think he'll probably end up wanting to be done before then, but he's not going to be rushed by anybody. He's going to make the decision when he's comfortable making the decision, ready to make the decision. I feel good about where Notre Dame is, but Ohio State is putting up a really good fight. And so, it's that idea of making the decision for the right reasons. There's going to be perception to what that reason is, no matter where he goes. If he goes to Ohio State, people assume he's doing it because of his dad. If he goes to Notre Dame, they'll think he's following his brother. But in reality, Sonny's going to make what the decision Sonny thinks is best for him. And that's why I think he's taking it slow. But I think the more Notre Dame adds players like Keon Keeley and Brennan Vernon and Drake Bowen and Adon Schuler, I mean, these are big-time defensive recruits. Notre Dame already has 2 5-star defensive end recruits in just the composite list. But if you add recruits that have been actually ranked as 5 stars, there's 3 defensive commits already in the 2023 class that are graded as 5 stars by at least one outlet. On 3 grades, Keon Keeley's a 5-star. And then, of course, Drake Bowen and Brennan Vernon are 5 stars on the 247 composite list. So that's helping Notre Dame, because Sonny's going to know, like, I'm going to go there and be surrounded by other great players. And I think that's important. So I think it could be a 2023 commit, to back to the original question from Coleman. I think it could be a 2023 commit. But if I had to guess if it's a 2022 guy, I would go with Billy Schrauth. But again, he has no timeline.
That's
so
not
that
imminent.
could change.
Yeah.
But the reason there's just not a lot of other guys on the board at this point in time in 2022.
Billy Schrauth's recruitment has just been so weird to me.
Mm-hmm.
Just so weird.
Yeah.
I mean, from such a strong like Notre Dame to like strong Wisconsin to I can't keep it straight, man.
Yeah.
As the world turns.
Yep.
Okay. Scott Yerbick, happy Friday. Curious, what percentage of a recruiting class usually pans out to be productive?
Loose Emoji used to have a formula for this, and I can't remember what it was. It was he had like looked back at past classes, and like he'd kind of come up to kind of some average percentage of guys that like pan out to the degree, meaning like they start, their key rotate, and I don't remember what it was. So I don't know if anybody ever heard him say, I know people have brought it up in the show, and I remember Lou talking about it, but
yeah, I
mean, I guess it depends on what you mean by pan out. To be productive, I mean, would you include like being a key rotation player? Like I've heard people say like Javon McKinley was a bust because he didn't live up to expectations, right? Well, Javon McKinley was still a good football player at Notre Dame. He just didn't do it for 3-4 years. He did it for 1. So, so I would have to kind of go through and look at that, but then also, that actually be kind of a fun project to see about
that's
BK.
Quite a project. If you're, that's quite a project.
Right. But then you'd have to determine, what's pan out. So
exactly.
Like if a guy's productive, but he doesn't meet the recruiting hype, does that include panning out? So, yeah, that's an interesting one. That might be a really good December between the end of the season and before the bowl game,
right?
Sort of endeavor to find out. So that's very interesting, Scott. Very interesting.
Felix Fournier says Emil Wagner as a tight end if he can't fill out. Read he used to play wide receiver.
Yeah, I mean, Josh Lugg also used to play wide receiver in like the 8th grade. So, like that tall. Doesn't like it's true. Like Josh played wide receiver.
Yeah, no, I'm
not making that up.
I believe you.
He's not a tight end. He's not that kind of athlete where he's going to go out there and catch passes. In my opinion, he's an offensive lineman. In my opinion. Now, could he do some things, Felix as a like a blocking tight end? Sure. Yeah. I mean, and then maybe catch like, could he kind of do what Troy Nicholas did for Notre Dame in 2012, caught 5 passes, maybe.
Yeah, right.
But the way Notre Dame recruits tight ends, they don't need Emil Wagner to play tight end. And if he ends up a tight end, either I'm way off on my assessment of him, which could be accurate, or something really bad happened at the tight end with the tight end depth chart.
Right, exactly.
So one of those things is true.
Right. I think that's actually a bigger point to this whole thing is that Notre Dame's tight end depth chart is so strong that would he add anything to moving into the tight end room if that ended up happening? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know that he gets on the field. And so what would be the point? You know what I mean? Outside of like a deep depth add.
Right.
Yeah. Jason Burkhart says, are the Irish looking to add a 4th wide receiver in the 22 class, or will they grab one in the portal? Thanks, Jason.
So they're looking at other receivers. What I don't know is, and this is something I haven't got a straight answer on yet, so I'm going to be honest with you, Jason, is I don't know if they're looking at those players in regards to protection if Amorian Walker leaves the class to be the 3rd, or if it's a situation where they want to add a 4th. That I don't have an answer to. I haven't been able to get one just yet. So I do know that they're looking at other receivers. I don't know if they're definitely pushing to bring one in the class. I don't think they are. I think that they're trying to go with 3. Now, I think that could end up being a mistake because their receiver depth chart is thin, but then to your point, the portal is an option. Now, my problem with the portal is I don't think Notre Dame's going to be able to get the kind of receivers through the portal that really are game changers. They're going to get Ben Skoronix. Now, the problem is Notre Dame thinks Ben Skoronix was a great player. And I think he was a complimentary player.
I mean, yeah.
And they tried to make him something he's not, which is why they struggled, against Clemson in the ACC title game, why they struggled against Alabama, because he's just not that game changer type of player. And those guys usually don't come to Notre Dame. And it's like Jamison Williams isn't leaving Ohio State to go to Notre Dame, right? He's leaving to go to Alabama. So unless that changes, and I definitely don't see guys wanting to come and play for the current receivers coach because he just hasn't shown a track record of being able to get the most out of his players. And that's been noticed. That's something being used against Notre Dame. I'm confident of that. And until that changes, it's always going to be a little challenging to really get some of those guys. And that's why you've got to find the unique guys like Tobias Merriweather and guys like CJ Williams who are just different cats and cats that like they don't just look at a receiver. Like CJ and Tobias are both real mature young men, and they look at Notre Dame as the entire package. And that's why they're at Notre Dame. It's not because of track record of anything. It's just they're attracted to Notre Dame for what Notre Dame stands for as much as what the track record is a wide receiver. And not a lot of top receivers are that way. And so that's what makes them a little bit unique in my opinion.
Ethan O'Connor, who in the current top 10 do you think ends the season with less than 2 losses? Really think this paints a picture for the end result of the college football playoff. We can start at the top. Georgia would be an answer. I don't think they end with 2 losses, right? So
I think we'll know for sure by about 4:00 on Saturday. Because if Tennessee doesn't beat them on Saturday, they're not losing a regular season game.
Right. And then they would only have the college or the SEC championship against Alabama. So at most 1, right? So I think you put Georgia on that list. You could put Alabama on that list, I suppose, but we'll see. I mean, man.
So the way I look at it is I don't see any of the undefeated teams ending up with 2 losses. I don't see Georgia, Cincinnati, or Oklahoma ending up with 2 losses.
I agree with that as well.
I think they could all get 1, but I don't see them getting 2. Then it's down to, okay, what about the 1-loss teams? Okay, Alabama, I could see catching an L against Georgia. I could see them catching an L against Auburn. I'm not predicting it, but I could see it.
Yeah.
Oregon's an interesting one. I don't know about them because
I don't think anybody.
To me, it's in 2 weeks against Utah. That's going to be the question, right? Yeah. That's the only team I think can beat them. I don't think the other teams on the schedule can beat them. Then Ohio State. I don't think Ohio State's going to lose to Michigan or Purdue. I don't. I think they're going to win out. I think both Michigan teams will end up with 2 losses.
Agreed.
I do not think Notre Dame will end up with 2 losses. But again, we'll know Saturday. We'll know by about 11 o'clock on Saturday night. We'll know. And I think Oklahoma State is going to take another loss. So when we look at the top 10 teams, those are, so those are the teams I would say. Oregon and Ohio State, I'm not predicting a second loss just yet.
Right.
I want to see how Oregon bounces back from not playing great last weekend in advance of their matchup against Utah. But Oregon and Ohio State, to me, are the 2 teams with 1 loss that have the best chance of running the table. Now, I'm not saying that they're going to because the way that this year has gone.
And Notre Dame, I would say Notre Dame's got a real good shot of running the table without picking up another loss. Right. I mean,
right. Because they just don't play anybody that should beat them.
Saying. Yeah, exactly.
It'd be a bad coaching job if they lost anybody between here and the end of the year.
Absolutely. Yeah. So what is that? 6 or 7 teams?
Well, so you got Georgia, Cincinnati, right? Oklahoma would have 1 or 0, right? And then you'd have Ohio State, Oregon, and Notre Dame. Yeah, so you'd have 6 teams with 1 or fewer losses.
Okay. All right. There it is. Okay, Demetrius Rex. What does Buckner offer against the Virginia defense? That has a pulse? I mean,
No, I mean,
Virginia's defense is
specifically, I
not
mean,
good. I'm just saying.
look, Virginia's defense at times has had problems with mobile quarterbacks,
Sure.
and because they're not good. And I think the thought being, it's like we said last week, hey, the mobile quarterbacks hurt this team. Oh, okay, so put Tyler Buckner in. Well, those mobile quarterbacks can run the entire offense. That's
Right.
partly why they hurt them. Tyler Buckner's not there yet. But I think what he can offer against the Virginia defense is what he offers every week. He's a really dynamic athlete that can move the chains by himself. I mean, he did that twice against
Right.
Navy. There were two
Right.
times where they had him dead to rights on the third down, and he just made somebody miss and picked up a first down. And he's a guy that can hit a shot down the field. If you leave him exposed in one-on-ones, you can drop back and let it rip and hit guys down the field, as he showed against Virginia Tech and at other times this season. So I think that's what he offers. He offers a really unique change of pace that you have to prepare for. That's not easy to prepare for, and he's a completely different type of player than Jack Cohn. So I think that sort of that curveball that you can use with Tyler Buckner is what he offers Notre Dame against the Virginia defense. And I'd say that if Virginia's defense was good.
Right. Of course. Brandon Plensner, Brian, is being creative and kind of reinventing the offense this week a possibility. How would Reese and the staff do that? Because I feel like the players wouldn't remember these new formations and or plays.
No, Notre Dame players picking that stuff up wouldn't be a problem. And I'm not talking about reinventing the offense, because here's the thing that you have to understand. People put in new formations all the time. New formations aren't challenging. And that's why, and Notre Dame has already said they teach pass plays conceptually. And what that means is, so when I design, my playbooks or playbooks in the past, what I would do the way I taught it was you have call side or front side, number 1, number 2, and number 3, right? And then you have backside number 1, number 2, and number 3. Doesn't always have a number 3, but in case you have that built into your concept depending on where it is. And usually backside number 3 and front side number 3 would have the same route, because you can't have both of them, right? I mean, you can only have, because that's 6 dudes, then you don't have who you snapping the ball to, the left tackle, right? So usually you'll have that sort of be the same concept. And so you got to know what number 1 does, what number 2 does, and what number 3 does. Well, if you're lining up in an 11 formation and running a deuce with 2 receivers to the right, a tight end attached, and then the W off, that's a 2x2. You're taught front side 1, front side 2, backside 1, backside 2. Well, that doesn't change if you line up in a diamond formation, right?
Exactly.
It doesn't change where if you're front side, you have this. The only thing that would change in a diamond formation is you'd probably have to teach one of those guys, hey, when we run this call, we're adding an extra blocker. You've got to do this, right? And so we're not advocating for adding new plays. We're advocating for adding new looks,
right?
Because everything that I would want to run out of that, Notre Dame has in their offense. And then if there is a thing or two that you could or should add, those are easy to learn. And a lot of times it's those new plays that are the easiest to learn, because the guy spends so much more time thinking about it because it is new, and you're going to rep it more, that it can be easy to do. But look, you watch Oklahoma, you watch Ohio State, they're adding new wrinkles every week from a formational standpoint, or a motion or a shift or whatever. Notre Dame does that all the time. It's not that difficult if you teach it the right way. And so we are asking for them to be creative. We are not asking for them to reinvent the offense. The formations we've talked about are not new. They're the concepts they would run out of the new formations are not new.
Right, exactly.
They're things you kind of already do. And it would just be about, okay, now you're teaching this block from the backfield as opposed to a wing or the slot.
Yes.
Right? That would be the new thing. And that's easy to do. That can be done in a week of practice. And that's not me guessing. I mean, I've done things like that with D3 kids. If the D3 kids can do it, if the 1AA kids I coach can do it, the Notre Dame kids can do it.
Absolutely. That's not an issue at all. JP.
Now, I will say this. If you are reinventing your offense, meaning you're putting in 8, 10 new pass concepts and 7 new run concepts and all that in a week, no, they're not going to figure that out, and you're going to get beat.
Yes, that's going to look ugly, and kids are going to look lost.
Yeah.
And frankly, that's when kids get hurt. But that's a different conversation.
Yeah.
JP Buellsfeld says, I'm sure that Irish Breakdown has worked out better than your greatest goals on day number 1. What has been your most pleasant surprise in Irish Breakdown's significant growth?
It's been the YouTube channel.
Yeah.
I had no idea that this would grow. I mean, when I first, so like the way it worked is when I started Irish Breakdown, my first call was to Vince. It was like, hey man, and he was at another place at the time.
Yep.
And it was like, hey, when you're done there, you know what to do. And we kind of already had some conversations
how long is
about that.
Gonna take?
Right. Like whenever your contract's up, you come let me know. But part of the reason he was so on board is, number one, our friendship that's existed for much longer than before I started Irish Breakdown. But number two, because, we had a vision for where we wanted to take this. And honestly, YouTube was not part of that conversation.
No, not at all.
It was not on my radar for a lot of reasons. One being my own lack of confidence in my ability to be good and, in front of a camera. And
100%.
and so, hey man, okay, it's bad enough for me to say it, then you're going to say that I'm bad.
No. I've been told a million times it's a face for radio. Okay.
Yes,
I've been in radio for a long time. The video thing scared the crap out of me.
Yeah. And so there's just was a lot of things. I just really didn't see this being anything. And honestly, when we first started doing videos, we were doing them so we could upload them onto the website.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
And so eventually it was like, well, let's try this. Let's try this thing out for YouTube and, whatever. And it really wasn't until I was speaking with my wife last night about, kind of going over my projections for 2022 and explaining to her why I'm comfortable, hiring people, because that's a decision that affects her. And I wanted her counsel because my wife's very smart and intelligent, and want to explain it to her what we're doing and all that kind of stuff. And, she's like, that's a pretty big jump in projection. Are you? And I was like, yeah, but if you go look at January, we had one revenue stream. It was the website. It was Maven. It was it. And now we've got like 6, right? So it's been incredible growth. But a lot of those things are things that I expected. This and the merch store are the two things I did. Now we don't do much from the merch store. We don't make a lot of money from the merch store, but the fact that we made any money from the merch store was never on my radar. Like this, that was never on my radar. But the community we built, there were people asking for it. Like when I had this hat made, I had Vince made, it was just for us to have on the show.
Yeah, it was for fun.
I can promise you there was no conversation of, hey man, if we wear these, people are really going to like them and they're going to want to buy them.
Yeah,
it was never a conversation. It was people started asking for them. And then I was like, people are asking for them. Like, whatever, let's do the show. And that's really where it came from. But this was an avenue of JP that I didn't anticipate. Like I knew the website was going to grow. I knew once I launched a message board, it was going to grow. Now we have surpassed our goals. There's no doubt for the message board as far as like up to now. Now we're not anywhere close to where the ultimate goal is, not even close.
Right.
And that's going to be dependent on, so the message board growing is going to be a large determiner of how many people we can hire. And so that needs to grow. But then, of course, you hire a recruiting person, and then hopefully that helps message board grow and so forth and so on. So this was this right here was the biggest surprise for us.
I think, and I'll take it one step further so this is really how I'm able to interact with people, because I'm not really on the message board as much, and interacting with the people on YouTube, doing the YouTube live, like the family aspect, and like, I didn't see that coming at all. Mm-hmm. Like it's always, every time I've covered Notre Dame, it's either been for a radio station or for another website or whatever. And it's just kind of a faceless crowd that you work for, and you're putting content out and you're doing stuff. Never anticipated the back and forth and the family atmosphere and the caring and all of that. Like that's the biggest surprise, the most pleasant surprise for me. And none of it, none of it has to do with any money that I've made or any of that. It's the family feel that we love so much. Didn't see that coming at all.
When we started the YouTube, really started thinking of, wow, let's do this YouTube thing. And it was after the Alabama game where I was like, I got some stuff I want to say. I called Vince. We were going to do a show that night. I called Vince. I got some stuff to say. Let's record a YouTube. And it was a great venting thing, but it was really well received. And then it was like, hey, maybe we should make this a thing. And they told us at the time, like, you need 1,000 subscribers and you need 4,000 hours of people watching your videos. And I was like, oh gosh. And so we're like, man, we're probably not going to get. Our goal was to get to 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 watch hours by August. That was our goal
by the game time, like by camp,
right? And then, August.
Right.
And then hopefully they said it would take a month or two to get monetized. So our goal was to be monetized by the start of the season.
Right.
we reached our goal and got monetized by middle of February. So that was shocking, and it's been a lot of fun, and it's why as we've grown other parts of the business, we've made sure to stay locked into this, because this is the one way where we kind of get a more immediate interaction, involvement, and really grow and build that community and that family. That's what I like about the message board too, because there is that interaction. You can get to know people and share with people and all that kind of thing. So it's a good question, JP. I appreciate
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks for that. That was fun. Let's see. Bang 1801 says, is Sonny Styles more of a linebacker or safety or just Kyle Hamilton 2.0?
He's more of like a rover linebacker type.
Right,
He's not really a third level player, in my opinion. And even before his most latest like growth spurt, I've always felt he would end up being a second level player. Even when you watched him as a sophomore and he was 205 pounds, it was more like, yeah, kid's gonna. It's just, and it's not so much about athleticism; it's just style of play. His style of play is very much downhill. I feel like if you're asking Sonny Styles to flip his hips and open and play cover two and those kind of things, you're not using him to the best of his ability. He is a guy you want near the ball, even more so than Kyle Hamilton, because Kyle is so exceptional at all those different things that you can kind of feel like if you're using him to do anything, you're using his skill set. Sonny is significantly better at coming downhill and making plays. And I think that's why I would have him be more of a rover safety type of guy. Rover linebacker type of guy, excuse me.
Right. Okay, Rob says, Brian and Vince, what is your most unacceptable moment / play watching a Notre Dame game in your lifetime? Mine's the 3rd and 43 during the 89 Miami game where the Hurricanes got a first down. If you don't have one, I have one because I read this question.
Go for it. Yeah.
Mine is the 4th and 9, I believe it was, against USC in the Bush Push game. Mm-hmm. That play gets forgotten about. If that play doesn't happen, then there is no Bush Push. The game's over,
right.
And it was the most perfectly placed ball that I've seen in a throw. I mean, it was just, again, sometimes you just have to tip your cap. It was good coverage. He didn't break stride in any way, shape, or form, the receiver. And the ball, Matt Leinart put the ball just right in the kitchen. I mean, it was a perfect throw, and it just tore my heart out. I mean, they tackled him, and Notre Dame was still winning after that play, but none of the other stuff happens on the goal line if Notre Dame stops them on that 4th and 9. That one hurt a lot.
Yeah, I guess I don't view that as unacceptable because I don't feel like anybody made a mistake. I mean, Ambrose Wooden was in about as good a position as you can be, and they had lost Chris Fromm earlier in that game, so you have your backup strong side edge rusher, and that was a Heisman Trophy winner throwing the ball to a second-round pick.
Right.
And I think unacceptable, again, but that can be taken anyway. I'm just saying why that's not for me.
Yeah.
The first thing that pops in my head, and I'm sure like when the show's over, Rob, like 87 more plays will pop in my head.
Right, exactly.
But the one for me was there's two. There's the play against, I think it was Navy or UConn in 07 or 09, where Jimmy Clausen throws the ball off the back of a receiver. It just like it showed the total dysfunction of the Charlie Weiss. I think it was off Michael Floyd, where Jimmy thinks he's throwing the back shoulder and the receiver's blocking, and it just shows how poorly coached that football team was and ends up getting picked off. The other one for me is Brian Kelly's decision to go for 2 against Northwestern in 2014. And in a situation where going for 2 meant nothing. Like you were up 11, you go for 2, you're up 13. That 12 and 13 meant nothing. What 12 did, the extra point did, meant Northwestern needed 3 scores to beat you, right? Now, if they get 2 touchdowns, they're going to beat you either way, right? If they score 2 touchdowns, you got, whether you went for 2 and got it and got to 13, it was irrelevant. 2 touchdowns was still going to beat you. What you needed to make sure didn't happen was that a touchdown, a 2-point, and a field goal didn't tie it. And that's exactly what happened. They got a touchdown, a 2-point conversion, and a field goal, so 2 scores, because the 2-point conversion counts as 1 score. Whereas if you go for 2 there, then they'd have to either one of 2 things. They'd have to go kick the field goal and then try to get the ball back, or they wouldn't have been able to attempt the field goal, and they would have had to try to convert and get another touchdown. And if they get a second touchdown, more power to them. You stink and couldn't stop them. But there was no reason at all to do that. And that game had another one. The jet sweep to Chris Brown in the red zone inside the 5-yard line that he fumbled was such a stupid play call because he had never done. You've never ran that with him before. He'd never taken a jet sweep before,
And you bring it
and
out on
you
the
waited
goal line.
in the 5-yard line. There were two huge ones, but the decision to go for two there was one of the worst. Like I'm like, there's like I've still to this day, 7 years later, have yet to understand the explanation for why they did that. There was no reason to do that, and that decision resulted in Northwestern being able to come back and tie the game up in regulation with just 2 scores and then beat you in overtime. So yeah, that would be mine.
JP Buellsfeld, another question kind of about the job. Says, do you ever feel or do you ever feel overwhelmed pressure by having so many people count on you for so much about Notre Dame football in such a time-sensitive manner?
So I want to be careful how I answer. Do I feel overwhelmed at times? Yes, because there's always so many things going on at once.
Right. It's like spinning plates.
Yeah. And it's like, I've got to publish a story. I've got to edit the story that somebody just sent to me, So like when we're doing the post-game show, I'm getting stories from Mike and Grant, and I'm having to edit those stories and get them published while we're doing the post-game show. Right. So those are things. And eventually I want to have people that I've hired to be editors and all that kind of stuff. But so overwhelmed simply from a task, but not overwhelmed from a stress or pressure standpoint, because I honestly view it as an honor and a privilege that I'm being open soul, heart, everything. I'm being completely honest with you, JP. I view it as an honor and a privilege that people do look at us to count on us, because we're able to. I'll tell you, one of the best compliments I ever get, and I've gotten this one a lot over the years, and it never ceases to stop meaning a lot to me, is I watch the game differently now because of listening to you or reading your stories or whatever, and I enjoy the game more now. Like I've had people say, like I used to get really angry during the games was part of this because I didn't necessarily understand why things were happening. And now it's like I don't get as angry watching games. I enjoy it more because I feel like I know why that happened. And that's an awesome thing, because I love the game of football, and I have passion about the University of Notre Dame's football program and the University of Notre Dame and what it's supposed to stand for and all those kind of things. And so the fact that in this time in my life I get to cover Notre Dame and talk Notre Dame. I mean, how many people get to wear a hoodie with the logo their wife designed and a hat and a flag and talk Notre Dame football and get paid for it?
Yeah, right.
It's an honor. It's a blessing. And so the only overwhelming pressure that I feel is just from I got 5 things I have to do and they're all on my plate at once. But that's life. That's what everybody does. That's,
right.
I mean, that's
what you signed up for.
Exactly. I chose to start my own business, knowing a lot of things that when I was at BGI or I was at other places, all I had to do was write my stories and publish them. Right. I mean, that was it. Yep. Here you go. Yep. But now it's like, but I chose that. That's what I wanted to do.
Right.
Because I had a vision for what coverage needed to be like in an all-encompassing manner. And I mean, and I enjoy it. I love it. But yeah, it gets I would say stressful, and there's like, to me, there's 2 types of stress. There's the anxiety stress.
Right.
And then there's just the stress of I've got a lot of things got to get done by this time.
Right.
And and then sometimes things fall through the crack. And I don't like that. Like we did a bad job this summer saying, hey, we're going to have this show and we're going to do this, and then we ended up not doing them.
Right.
And I'm trying to get better about that, not promising things that we can't deliver.
Absolutely.
But that comes from that thought of, well, I wanted to do that, but A, B, C. And that's part of the learning process of doing this kind of thing. Because a year ago, we weren't sitting here doing this show. I would have been doing something different, and so yeah. But it's truly an honor and a privilege to be someone that people do look to say, hey, explain to me what just happened. Help me understand. Help me feel better. Let's talk ball together.
Right.
I view it as a privilege. I really do.
No question. It is a privilege.
Doesn't mean there aren't days that I don't want to do it, because I got a million things going on.
It's like anybody's job, though. I mean, as much as you love your job, and I'm not saying you specifically, but anybody out there, as much as you love your job, there's going to be days where you're like, man, I just don't want to do it today.
It's not so much that it's just I have a million other things. I got to get caught up on life. Like whenever I have Sean come on the show, And people, and Vince is like, did you watch the show? I was like, well, the reason I had Sean do the show is because I have to do 87 million things. So I
But
was
you're
not
doing
like
87 million
because
in
I was
one,
just sitting there
and
watching
you do
the
have it on,
show.
like behind the scenes.
Usually, yeah,
which is awesome.
Yeah,
It's 87
so
million
like
in
you were
one.
doing the show with Tom Noy the other night, and I had it on as I was doing other things.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's why I was like, great job talking about the team, because I gave Vince a list of questions. I gave him like 5 questions to ask about the recruiting, and then Vince took it like, hey, let's talk about the team, and I was like, yes. But no, it truly is an honor and a privilege to be in the role, and I try, and I think that's partly why I feel like the manner in which I interact with people has changed a little bit. I think one of the biggest blessings of being able to do this is that I feel like people that are willing to watch the show with an open mind, or maybe didn't know how I interacted before, are going to view me differently, because you can see that, I don't have the ill will towards people that some think, and I talk ball, I speak my mind. And I feel like seeing us in this format will also allows people to see my personality a little bit more,
a little more than just on the board.
Right. And so I feel like that's been helpful, but also being a business owner has kind of made me step back and think about like, okay, do you really want to kind of engage in this manner? Do you really want to kind of go about doing certain things this way? And it really makes you think. Now, it doesn't mean I'm always going to change my, hey, I'm coming at you for a reason, but it certainly has been something that has forced me to really think a lot about, how do you engage certain people? And hey, this person's just trying to understand more. How do you want to interact with them to make sure that they feel comfortable coming back to you to ask the questions again? And that's not something I was actually, matter of fact, that was something at times I was pretty darn bad at, to be honest with you.
Self-reflection, man. There's nothing better. Okay. Andrew Goss. Is it snowing in South Bend? No. It is over 40 degrees. Not saying that that's warm, but it is over 40 degrees. The wind is blowing, but it is not snowing. It's supposed to rain this weekend, though.
We have a couple of super chats, but I wanted to get this comment from Tyler Hanley up.
Tyler Hanley says, that is awesome. That is why Irish Breakdown is the best show, not only for football, but as a family. Bingo. Love that.
And what that refers to is at the beginning of the show, for those who joined us, we mentioned on Wednesday, we're actually going to be doing a Thanksgiving drive where all of our super chat and all the revenue we make is going to go towards
every dime
buying food. For every single dollar that we make, every single penny that we make is going to go towards. We're going to do the shop. We're going to buy food for local charities that are going to be providing Thanksgiving meals for homeless families in need, and all those type of things. So that's what that's in reference to. So Tyler, thank you very much for that.
Yep. No.
Got a super chat from Lucas Chapman.
Totally missed that.
Thank you for that, Lucas. I appreciate that.
That's awesome. And Lucas says, just signed up for a 1-year IB subscription. Best money I've spent in a while. I don't know what took me so long. Again, thanks for everything. Thanks, Lucas. Really appreciate that, man. That's awesome. Do we have another one, or is that it?
That's it. I think that's the only one we have left.
Okay, good. I didn't even see that one come up. All right. So Ty B says, do they run the Tyler Buckner package in only 12 personnel? He's been in there. No,
they'll do 13 sometimes.
He's been in there in 21 personnel.
Yeah, he's been in there in 11 personnel too.
Yeah,
I believe that. I could be wrong. No, I think it was 12. The touchdown pass to Avery Davis he threw against UNC, that was 12 because Michael Mayer was blocking.
Because he's been in there with 2 running backs though before, hasn't he?
He has.
Yeah.
All
right. Jared Vogt. Is it Vogt? Vogt? Vogt. I don't know. I apologize, Jared. It's Jared. Jared says, any chance if Emil Wagner cannot physically fill out that he can be used in the Tremble way? Wow, that's different. Not as a pass catcher, obviously, but as a run blocker. You talked about his run blocking ability and athleticism.
He's a different kind of He's a different kind of athlete than Tommy was.
Yeah.
But yes, could he be used as sort of a sixth blocker in certain ways? Yes, he could. But right now, the focus is going to be on, look, if you don't think the kid can pan out as an offensive lineman, you don't take him, right? Notre Dame's taking him because they genuinely believe that he can pan out as an offensive lineman. And if he can, he's got a chance to be really, really good. The upside is there. It's just, there's just, probably going to need some time. But the upside is there. But yes, to your point, look, there are other ways you can, if he can't be a starting left tackle for you or right tackle for you, there are things you can do to where you can still get some value out of him. Yes.
Mike Gardner says, are there any freshmen that you guys are surprised that are not making any real contribution this year.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I got a couple. Go ahead, Vince.
I was going to say Prince Collie, because not only because of the recruiting profile that he had coming in, but because there's been injuries at linebacker, right? And I thought that was going to allow him to.
There's only been one at inside linebacker, right?
Right. Well, that's true. I thought he would be able to see the field a little faster.
Yeah. Well, I guess where I would disagree with that one is, I mean, he starts on several special teams, and I feel like that's a contribution.
That's true.
There's been several on defense, to be completely honest with you. And normally it's the defense that's playing young guys and the offense it's not. But I'm a little surprised Gabriel Rubio hasn't played a snap yet.
Yeah.
And I still can't believe they haven't found a way to get one of those freshman corners on the field. I've heard that they like them. And I'm like, I don't know how you're not playing them when Clarence Lewis and Tariq Bracy, and especially Ramon Henderson. Like, you know, I see him bringing zero value to the cornerback position. And everybody's like, oh, Kelly loves to talk about how good he's been. And I'm like, well, maybe he's good in practice, but when he gets on the field on Saturdays, he's not good. And I just have a hard time believing that the Notre Dame freshman corners are worse than that.
Right.
You know, I mean, I just say, well, you know, he doesn't know. They don't know the plays. Well, apparently neither did Ramon against North Carolina.
Yeah, seriously. A lot of conversation in here about what Kyle Hamilton is going to do.
Here's one from Benjamin Weiss. Is there a chance Foskey comes back to community developing? Obviously, he's great and drafts me. So for me, Benjamin, it's not about coming back to continue developing. It's coming back based on his draft stock tells him to come back. He won't turn down. If they tell him you are a first-round pick, there's no way you're getting out of the first round. He's probably going to come out and should, to be honest with you. He's not going to say, nah, I'm going to go back because I want to continue developing. It's going to be more about, hey, you're a second-round pick. You're a day 2 pick. We think if you go back, you can become a top 15 pick. That's when you say, yeah, I'm going to go back and develop, right? So the question is legitimate. It's just you only go back to develop if your projection is lower than what you think it is. If they say, hey, look, you're a top 10 pick, but you could probably use some more development. He's going to be like, cool, I'll develop in rookie camp.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
With top 10? Yeah, exactly.
Right.
But look, there's no perfect prospect. Of course.
And Benjamin's not asking, would he turn down a top 10 pick? I'm being hyperbolic to make a point. Right. Absolutely. That's all.
I'm going to throw this one up here, and then I've got to take off, Brian. But John Keevers says, who is expected to start field corner tomorrow night? And do we expect Xavier Watts to rotate early in the game?
I would imagine we're going to see Clarence Lewis outside at field, and we're going to see a decent chunk of nickel with sort of like we saw against North Carolina with Tariq Bracy at nickel. Yeah. That's what I think we're going to see a decent amount of tomorrow.
Agreed.
So, yeah. And then do I expect Xavier Watts to rotate early in the game?
Maybe getting some more playing time. I'm hoping that that's the case. I really am. I really am hoping that. All right, Brian, I'm going to take off. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. I'll be talking to you.
Sounds good.
I got something I want to throw at you about this show. So, all right, I'll talk to you, brother.
Vince coming with the ideas. Love it. All right, so let's get to some more questions here. All right, Notre Dame 2164. Am I wrong for being frustrated with the Kyle Hamilton situation? I hate the whole BK keeps it a secret how bad the injury is, and well, he may play this weekend, but again, he may not play. I get your frustration, especially when you think about what Notre Dame's going to face this weekend and how much they could use him. I think so. I don't think you're wrong. I get the frustration, to be honest with you. And I don't think Brian Kelly's keeping it a secret for any other reason than just he's protecting his player. Because number one, you don't need to let them know how severe an injury is, because when he comes back, then other teams can kind of say, hey, that guy's got a weak knee, let's go after it, more so than they would. But then also, because there is more parties involved than normal, you need to make sure that you're careful about what you say publicly. He's walking a very fine line right now, and I don't envy him at all, and I think he's doing a good job of it so far. But it's one of the parts of being a head coach that I don't necessarily envy very much. Domer Grizz, happy Friday. How difficult is it for the team to transition back to defending a prolific passing offense after spending all of last week focused on such a different style of offense? I don't think it's hard. I really don't think it's hard. I think when I look at it, Domer, it's about certain principles that carry over week to week. And I think that's the thing that needs a discipline. Do your job, right? Trust the guy next to you. If we tell you to do this, do it, and do it the way we tell you to do it. Don't get caught peeking in the backfield if your job is to do this. Don't get caught focusing on the number 2 receiver if your job is to do this. Don't get locked in on the number 1 receiver if your job is also to key this. I mean, so it's just about do your job effectively, and do your job well, because game plans change week to week to week anyway. It's a different type of adjustment. I don't want to act like it's the same, but it's a different type of adjustment. But there are certain philosophies and principles that they're going to apply to. There's just certain principles they'd have to apply to whatever game plan that I think would be effective, and that's going to be the key. All right, here we go down here. Andrew Goss, how much money would we have to raise to get Brian to shave off the beard? I don't think that there is enough money you could raise. The beard is staying for now. All right, so it's going to stay, and yeah, it's going to stay. Jay says, I think Justin. Jay, I don't feel like we've seen you making comments in a while, so it's good to see you in here. Says, I think Justin Rhett is committing soon. I have seen him. I've seen people talk about how he's going to commit soon, but I don't know if there's a date. But that's kind of what I was saying earlier about if just 22 would probably be Billy Shrouth, but I could see a scenario where there's a 2023 kid committing soon. There's about 4 or 5 2023 kids that I would not be shocked if they picked this winter, like November, December. Yeah. Now I'm not predicting they're going to get 4 or 5 guys, but there's 4 or 5 guys that I could see 1 or 2 of them making a decision, and Justin Redd is one of them. I just don't know that he has a date yet, and I could be wrong, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe he has a date set yet for making a decision. Bang 1801 says Drake has been recruiting Peyton Bowen a lot on Twitter recently. Yes, he has. And the Notre Dame staff has been on him a lot. And again, this is part of the reason I'm going to have the Chris O'Leary potential splash article, because Chris O'Leary hasn't landed anybody yet, but he's got a chance over the next 6 to 8 months to really make a big splash in 22 and 23. And I'll get into that. And Peyton Bowen is one of those guys that you look at. And I'll be honest with you, there's a top 150 caliber safety that wanted to commit to Notre Dame, from what I'm told. And Notre Dame kind of said, slow down a little bit, because they're shooting for big-time players. And Peyton Bowen and Caleb Downs are those 2 players. And to me, that's gutsy, that's risky, but that's the kind of decision that you have to make if you truly want to recruit at the elite level. And I'm all for it. Right now it's like, hey, you took the risk, now go get it done. Don't miss out. But I like that. I really do like that way of attack. I really do. We got a super chat down here I want to get to. Alberto with the Euro super chat. Thank you for that. Just saying hello from Spain. It's 7:30 p.m. over here. Keep up the great work. You're my favorite Notre Dame video podcast. I appreciate that very, very, very much. Let's get back up here to some questions. See where I left off. I think I'm close to that. Okay, found Jay's question, and there we go. Okay. Johnny Jimenez, you have 3 good to great linebackers coming in 2022. How would you utilize Burnham, Sneed, Junior, Marist, Prince, and JD individually? I'm going to just kind of, first of all, push back and say, if you're going to talk about the linebacking class and it doesn't include Nolan Ziegler, you're missing the boat. I have Nolan Ziegler with a higher upside grade than Junior Tuihalamaka, to be honest with you. So I would absolutely include him in this conversation, because Nolan is going to have a chance. He's going to have every bit much of a chance as the other linebackers to make a splash in the spring and hopefully earning a role. How would I utilize Burnham, Sneed, Junior, Marist, Prince, and JD? For me, first of all, you figure out who plays where. For me, in that group right there that you're looking at, I'd say, JD Bertrand and Junior Tuihalamaka would be guys that I'd be battling for that Mike position. I would have Marist, Prince, and Burnham sort of playing, battling for that will position. And then, of course, with Marist and Burnham, you can also use them as sort of edge rushers at certain times. if you feel comfortable with Burnham and Maris doing that, then you could look at using Prince in sort of a rover role. I think Prince and Snead and Nolan Ziegler are going to be guys battling for that rover position, that future rover position. And of course, Jalen Snead can play Will. He can play rover. I think he could play Mike. Again, in this particular defense, you can move guys around. You don't need a pure Mike in this defense. But that's kind of how I would see those guys lining up. I think Prince is still sort of a guy that I'm looking to see what's his role going to be. I could see him playing Mike. I could see him playing Will. I could see him dropping 5 pounds and going and playing rover. I think it's going to be about find your best guys and then find a role for them. And that really is what they're looking to do. Brandon Plensler says, hoping for a 3-man safety class in 2023 of a Don Schuler, Peyton Bowen, Caleb Downs. That's the goal. That's what Notre Dame is shooting for. That's 100% absolutely where they want to be in this class. At most, they're only going to get 1 pure safety in the 2022 class, right? That's Xavier Nwakpa. That's who they're shooting for. If he picks someone else, it's going to be 0. And so it's next year's class is when they're hoping to really hit it big and restock the depth chart with numbers and upside and talent. And that would be quite the trio. And I think there's a lot of positional flexibility within that. Obviously, you look at a guy like Adon Schuler. I think he could play sort of like that rover position, not the rover position they have now, but I say nickel might be a better use of that, where they could kind of get that third safety on the field effectively. I think he could do that. But then, of course, they want to be able to have a rotation on the back end. And they're going to need 3 guys in that class to be able to get to that point. John Climax says, I got the smokers prepped and ready. Tomorrow is going to be a good day. Barbecue, beverages, fire, and football. Absolutely. Absolutely. Michael Brahoni says, did you expect more from Prince Collie this year besides special teams? With the injuries, yeah, I'm not going to lie. I thought he probably, if you'd have told me before the year that Maris Luafau is going to get hurt and Paul Moala is going to get hurt, and I would have guessed that Prince Collie would have played more. Yeah, I would have. I would have. Mike Gardner said, need to stay on that Penn State quarterback commit. Saw him in person at Brown's game. He was being honored for picking apart Mentor High School. Yeah, I don't think they are. And that's been their view of him. This entire process has been mind-boggling. Why they were late on him. They finally made a push on him. It was super late. He picks Penn State. I have not been told that they're still on him. And it's a little confusing, to be honest with you, as to why not, especially with all the rumblings at Penn State. I don't understand why they're not pushing for him. It's a little puzzling. John Climax is also achievement unlocked last weekend. Both my kids played in a football game at the Navy tailgate. That's pretty awesome. That's pretty awesome. Brian Weiser says, do you think Avery Davis could be a good coach in the future due to his experience playing and being coached at various positions? If coaching is something he wants to do and he has a passion for it, I think those things would absolutely help him as a coach. I think the fact that he's played quarterback gives him the ability to kind of show leadership, and I think he's a very calm, poised kid. He seems to be very smart. He's fundamentally sound. I think there's a lot of things about Avery Davis that would make me say, hey, if I was looking for players on the team that could transition to be coaches, he'd be one of them. He'd absolutely be one of them. That's a good thought, Brian, and very, very good question. Domer Grizz, what are composite recruiting rankings? I understand composite All-American honors, 3 of 5 services. How about a single recruiting service have their own composite score? But how can so what they do, Domer Grizz, is, this is a good question, is 247 takes all the rankings for their site, Rivals, ESPN. I don't know if they use SI. I don't know if they don't use On3 yet, although On3 started their own composite ranking, then they use theirs, obviously. But they have a certain score based on where you rank on each one, and then it kicks out sort of what your grade is, and then that grade determines your ranking. Is how they do it. So they just take the rank, all the services rankings, and they add them together. I have a super chat down here from Garth. Get to that. Hopefully I don't get booted too far down. Garth says, thank you for the super chat, by the way, Garth. I know Kia is playing DN this year because of the Schweitzer injury. Could you see him eventually at the Mike position when he bulks up a little? I thought he was playing Mike this past week. I'd have to go back and look at the fourth quarter again, and I haven't yet for Navy when they brought in the backups. But yeah, I think he'll be a Mike linebacker. But look, they're going to find it. The big thing about all this is if kids are good enough to play, they're going to find a place for them. They're going to say, hey, look, yeah, you're not, you're this, you're that, whatever, but we need to find a place for you, and that's going to be the focus. Irishman 7114, happy Friday, IB Nation. With the unexpected commitment of Wagner, I know we have room for Shrouth, but does this change our numbers for getting the Wankman to D lineman? It does not. I don't think. No, I think perhaps what it could be is they know they're not getting both of the D linemen, so that opened up a spot, but they're not going to give up a spot for it. They would do something else on the current roster for that before that. John Erickson says, think that if Armstrong only comes in and plays the first series, he will inspire all his teammates, could be in for a long night. Possibly, but again, at the end of the day, that doesn't matter if you do your job as a defense. It won't matter. Joseph Bear says, Brian Vince, have heard Brian Kelly's a dark horse candidate for USC. Is there any truth to this rumor? Would either or both care to comment? I don't think so. I'd be shocked if Brian Kelly left to go to USC. There's so many reasons for it. I don't know why he'd want to go to LA. And this isn't a shot at California, but like everything about Brian Kelly is Northeast, Midwest, and Southeast. He has a home in Florida. He's from the Northeast. I don't know why all of a sudden he'd want to go to LA, for example. If anything, his agent, Trace Armstrong, if he's dead set on leaving Notre Dame, should be talking to his alma mater. Hey, if you fire Dan Mullen, my guy might be interested. I think that would make more sense to me than USC. And I'm not saying he's doing that. I'm just making the point that if he wanted to leave Notre Dame, that would make more sense to me than USC. I think that's just people kind of trying to stir the pot, honestly. And the question is if it is true, how does Notre Dame respond to that? I have a feeling that if Brian Kelly was genuinely flirting with USC, that Notre Dame's response this time would be different than it has in the past for a number of reasons. But I'd be shocked if that were true. And we'll find out, right, over the next month, but I'd be shocked if that were true. David Sauer says, are you sold on Tyler Buckner as QB1 next year after what you have seen so far this season? Sold on him. I mean, he still has to make a lot of growth from now to then. I think Drew Pine is going to battle him. But I'll say this. I don't know about QB1 by Ohio State game. I need to see more growth from him. We'll learn a lot about him his next 3 games and in the spring and fall camp. But I'll say this, David. This is the best way I can answer your question. I had Tyler Buckner rated as my number 2 player in this class, I believe, behind Blake Fisher. I had him as a 5-star upside kid. I thought he was going to need some work because of not playing football 2 of the last 3 years. But I thought he's a kid that could be a dynamic special player at Notre Dame. There's nothing I've seen from him this year that has made me change my mind. If anything, it's solidified it. Now, does that mean he'll be QB1 by next season? I don't know the answer to that. But I am as confident now as I've ever been that Tyler Buckner is going to end up being a really good, or has the talent to be a really good quarterback at Notre Dame. And so, yes, that opinion has not only if it has changed, it's changed in the positive. It's been more solidified. Very good question. Irish for life, just making sure I get my like in live. God bless all IB Nation. Go Irish, beat VA. Thank you for that, buddy. Appreciate that very, very much. Wayne Baker, is insurance available that would enable Kyle Hamilton to protect his earning potential against career-ending injury? I would imagine if there was, and I believe that stuff still exists. I don't know if it used to be like Lloyd's of London. I don't know who does that now. But if that, like Jalen Smith got money because of his injury. Jalen Smith got insurance money because of his injury. That's a fact. Wayne Baker, to your question, if that still exists, and I believe it does, he would have already had it. He would have had it before he went into the season. Normally you buy that stuff before the fact. It's not something where you get hurt and then before you come back, you get it. I'd be shocked if Kyle didn't already have that. Jeff Luke, has there been any change to the start of the fourth quarter during day games as well? You know what? I didn't even ask about that. I wasn't at the game. I'll have to ask Vince about that. I'm not sure what they did. Mark Stallman, Hello, IB community, asking for prayers for Anne, my mother, who is very ill. Thanks to all of you. Mark, you absolutely, absolutely do. A lot of your friends down here and in this community are already best wishes and praying for your mom. And Vince and I will do so as well. Absolutely. She will be in our prayers. Herney 777, you guys do a good job. Hard workers. Thank you. Hopefully someday we can get you to tell us that we do a great job, but we will keep working hard to get to that point. Michael Brahoni says, speaking of IB growing, how do I apply for positions you plan on adding? Guessing being from PA hurts, huh? So first of all, I'm having my wife finish up making a couple forms for me. Uh, I'll be posting the recruiting job on Monday, and there will be a link in the story for anyone that wants to apply on Monday. So I hope that I have a lot of people trying to apply. There is no requirement on having to live in South Bend. In fact, in some ways, living in South Bend as a recruiting person can actually be damaging, or not damaging, but like gives you less access to go travel to see recruits because whoever we hire will have a travel budget and all that kind of stuff. So that will be be part of it. But yeah, if anyone's interested in that, certainly you can apply. Obviously, I have criteria I'm looking for, and yeah, I mean, and I'm not going to be interviewing everyone. I can only interview a certain amount of people, depending on how many we get in, how many applications we get. But hopefully, we get a lot. So we'll see. I've already had a couple people reach out about it, so that's a positive. We'll see how it pans out, though. And a lot of people reaching out and praying for your mom, Mark. So definitely appreciate you bringing that to our attention. Chad Williams says, other than KJ Wallace, Sebo, can you provide a few names that are possible transfer possibilities? I don't really want to get into that, Chad. Not that it's not a good question. It is. It's just the timing. I think waiting until after the season is probably a better time to talk about that. And obviously, those two guys are candidates for that. But let's discuss this. Let's discuss a little bit further after the season. I think that time in December is a better time to be able to really assess the entire season. I can do some, reach out to some people and try to figure some things out, and we can go from there. RJG Irving. Hey, how about a couple wrinkles with number 12 in a Taysom Hill role? I kind of feel like, RJ, I would like for you to explain to me what that looks like for you. Cause in my mind, I kind of feel like they already do that, unless you're talking about like playing receiver and stuff like that, then I don't think they're going to do that. They don't need to do that. But I'd just be curious kind of how you envision that, like specifically what you look for. Partly because I don't really watch a lot of NFL. I mean, I know that Taysom Hill does other things, but I don't really watch a ton of NFL, so I couldn't really tell you what that looks like. Irishman 7114, love this channel. It's especially been helping me because I'm on COVID quarantine. Would love prayers for healing. You got it. It's been mild, just very isolating and lonely. Chats and videos have really helped. Well, I'm glad that we could be there. And if you're I know you're on the message board, so obviously talk to us there, and we'll try to keep you as occupied as we possibly can. Robert Rhodes is having some bad memories of that USC game too that Vince brought up. That 4th and 9 is the play I remember from that game too, more than the Bush push. I was sitting in a cigar store in Southern Cal, only Notre Dame fans there, and I had to take my hat off too. Yeah, it was. That play is the one that. I mean, that play set up the other one. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Mace K, every play of the Boston College game in 1993 was unacceptable to me. That's really good. That's really good. Rob Lobo 123. Are the Georgia Bulldogs just Florida State 2013? Thoughts? No, I don't think they're nearly that good. Not even close to being that good. Now their schedule's been a little, not all that challenging, kind of like that schedule. But no, I don't think that. No. NDN 8V. I would say Bob Davies' decision to go into OT versus Nebraska in 2000. Notre Dame had some momentum and the ball and just let the clock run out to go into overtime. Maybe I'm misremembering. I'm going to go back and look at that. I remember something like that late in the game, but yeah, that's an interesting one. Benjamin Weiss says, I very much believe if you invest in the merch store, you can drive a ton of people to IB. Funny t-shirts and apparel doesn't need to be IB branded. We get people asking, where'd you get that shirt, etc. Yeah, I've thought about that, but honestly, I'm not at a place where I'm really concerned about growing the merch store a ton just yet. We have a couple things we're working on. My wife is working on creating a Let It Play Out logo, that kind of thing. And, the gap closers has been good. It's just, I kind of like that kind of thing to grow organically. And that may not be the best business decision, but not everything I do is geared towards what's the best way to maximize profit. If that were the case, I would charge more for the merchandise because I don't make a lot of money off of the merchandise. Sometimes I just like things to be more of a, more of sort of like it's part of being it's being part of the community, is that, as opposed to that leads to people being part of the community. And I could be wrong, but yeah, they could be wrong. And Chad Williams, I'm not going to pull up that comment, but I'm not quite sure what you're talking about there. And yeah, send me a DM because I don't really appreciate that comment and I don't really know where you're coming from. Maybe I'm reading it correctly, but strongly disagree with what you just said there. Tool Worker, you boys are the best source for all things Notre Dame football. Thanks for being so dependable. You are welcome. Ethan Bodner, gotta love these homies. Keep up the great work. Love listening to y'all. I finally stopped getting super angry at Notre Dame because now I know why things happen. So thank you guys so much. And that's what I love. I love hearing stuff like that. Doesn't mean you lose your passion. It just means you have a better understanding of why it happened, and then you can steer your emotions in a more constructive manner, which is what I like. It's something I'm really really enjoy. Tony Stengel, Brian, your rant on the decision to go for 2 against Northwestern has me cracking up. I remember that like it was yesterday, and it still makes me mad. I didn't think I ranted, Tony. I think I explained it very rationally about why it was a stupid call. I didn't think it was a rant. We were asked a question about most, unacceptable play, and that play was pretty flipping unacceptable to me. But I didn't think it was a rant. I thought it was a pretty rational explanation, to be honest with you. All right, Zacho. Any under the radar younger guys y'all are watching as a key player for future years? Obviously, Watt, Styles, but guys like Ahrensberger would be huge to turn out. Yeah, Ahrensberger is definitely on that list. Definitely on that list. And obviously, there's guys like Joe Alt who stepped up. Deion Colsey, I think, has got a very bright future. Kane Barong, if he can get healthy, is a guy. Logan Diggs. Some other young guys, the 2 freshman corners, well, all the freshman corners that I think have a chance to do something in the future. Justin Walters is a guy. Surprised we haven't seen him more. He's somebody else that I'd look for. Just off the top of my head, those are some guys I'm really curious to see kind of how they pan out and are sort of under the radar. Some of those guys I believe are under the radar guys, at least under the radar from where they're playing now. Like Deion Colsey's not under the radar from where he was as a recruit, but he's not playing as much now, and we don't talk a lot about him. There's a lot of talk about Styles, but I think Deion's a guy that could step up and really do some things. All right. May say K, well, I guess I'm doing some super chats on Wednesday. I appreciate that. Appreciate that very, very, very much. Florida Irishman, to follow in Lucas's footsteps, how do I sign up for an annual IB subscription? I am giving the info to my wife for an early Christmas present. So what I'm going to do, and I appreciate that very, very much, I'm going to actually put the link in the chat below. So I'm going to put the join page. So all you do is go there and you can sign up. We have several options. All of them will get you a membership. We have a monthly membership. It's an IB Insider monthly membership. It's $4.99 a month, and it just kind of renews every month. We also have an annual membership, which is you just sign up for a year. It's at $49.99 and get you an annual membership. And then, of course, we also have the Booster Club. And the Booster Club is basically just different levels of people joining. And it doesn't get you necessarily any special perks other than you get a year membership as part of it. You get discounts to the merch store if you sign up. But the Booster Club is just people have asked about, hey, we want to support you beyond just signing up. How do we do that? And the Booster Club is the way to do that. So those are the really the 5 options, because there's 3 layers of the Booster Club. And let me pull up my numbers here real quick, because we've had I didn't think anyone was going to do it. That was actually my wife's idea, if I'm being completely honest with you. She thought that would be something to do. I didn't think anyone would sign up for it, but we've actually had over 36 people have actually signed up as part of the Booster Club. So that's really cool and really appreciative, and certainly helps us out and grow as a business. So if you click on that link below, that will take you to where you can get in. If you sign up for a monthly membership, you get a one-time 10% off discount to the merch store. If you sign up for an annual membership or you donate to the Booster Club, you get 20% off your next purchase through the Irish Breakdown membership store or merch store. So check that out. Definitely check that out. Tony Stengel, do you think because the line is playing better against bad competition, Kelly will point to this as the reason to keep Quinn next year? Yes. And then the way they're going to finish the recruiting class, I absolutely think that is what he will do. Yes, I do. I'm not optimistic he's going to make a change on the offensive line. D-Rock, kickoff weather tomorrow in Charlottesville, Virginia, 7 p.m., clear, 44 degree. That's 44 degrees. Wow. Okay. 8 mile per hour winds, 8 p.m., 42 degrees, 9 p.m., 40 degrees, 10 p.m., 39 degrees. That's a little bit cold for this time of the year in Virginia. At least, unless Northern Virginia is a little bit different than where I'm from in Virginia. So yeah, that's interesting. And the Florida Irishman says, D-Rock, just say the game tomorrow will be true football weather. Yep. Yep. Florida Irishman, it's almost 80 here. Little different. definitely different. Tracy Tipton, great show as always, Brian and Vince. Thank you for that. Tracy, appreciate you being a part of it. Angela Steverson, I love you so much. Keep taking us on this journey, please. We absolutely will, Angela, and we appreciate the kind words, and we appreciate your support very, very much. Domer TX 222. The year is 2015. What would be more unbelievable? Oklahoma State having a great defense and pedestrian offense, or Bronco Mendenhall team having an explosive offense and terrible defense? That's a good one. Okay, yeah, I would have probably gone with Bronco having an explosive offense and terrible defense, because I could see the trends of college football. But if you'd have told me that Oklahoma State was going to be a top 10 team and have an offense, it's like, how many? I mean, have they scored more than 30 points a game more than 2 or 3 times? I don't believe that they have. I'm pulling that up now. Oklahoma State has scored more than 30 points twice all season, 3 times all season. 23, 28, 21, 31, 24, 32, 21, 55 against Kansas, and 24. And they're 8-1. Yeah, I would not have believed you. I just said, get out. Get out. You don't know what you're talking about. I can't talk to you anymore. And you'd have been absolutely right. You'd have been absolutely right. TJ0311. I only miss the snow when I don't need to shovel. That's a good way of looking at it. I like snow. I think it's pretty. I don't necessarily like the cold, but you can stay inside. It's that part right there that I hate. I hate shoveling. Absolutely. Apparently, StreamYard did not like the fact that I hate shoveling, because they kicked me out. And I don't know why. All right, let's get down here to some more before we get out of here. Kevin McPherson, how does Notre Dame stack up offensively, defensively against the current 4 teams? So, Kevon, against Georgia, so we got Georgia, Alabama, Oregon, and Ohio State. Okay, against Georgia, I think Notre Dame stacks up well skill-wise on offense. I think if they could protect the quarterback, there's some things they could do on Georgia. The problem is they don't match up at all against Georgia up front. Now, if Notre Dame plays better and they have the best offensive line game of the year, they could be good. But like the idea of watching Josh Lugg and Kane Madden trying to block the Georgia big guys and edge rushers just does not make me feel warm and fuzzy inside. If somehow they could, with Michael Mayer and Kevin Austin and the receivers and Kyron Williams and the backs, I think Notre Dame could move the ball and score on Georgia enough for it to be a game, because I don't think Georgia's offense matches up incredibly well against Notre Dame's defense. I think the pro style, especially if Kyle Hamilton plays, because he would be able to help kind of with the run game and take away the center field at times. So I actually think, to be honest with you, I think Alabama and Oklahoma are worse matchups for Notre Dame than Georgia. Just because, again, that's what football's all about, right? It's about matchups. The reason I say that is because the teams that concern me are the teams that can score and score no matter how good your defense is. They can still get to over 30. And that's how I feel about those teams. And that's sort of true against Ohio State. The difference is Ohio State's defense is garbage. And I think that Ohio State's offense is a little bit more susceptible to getting pressure than maybe Alabama and Oklahoma. Although Alabama's offensive line's been inconsistent as well, I still feel it's a little bit better than what Ohio State's is, at least from what I've seen. And so I think Alabama, well, I think Notre Dame can score in Alabama. I don't think their offense is very good at all. Defense is very good at all. I think Notre Dame could hold its own against the Alabama offense, but I don't think the offense can score enough to win those games. The offense still has not proven to me that it can really score on teams enough to outscore them. Now you say, well, North Carolina's defense is terrible. Absolutely terrible. It's way worse than Alabama or Ohio State or Oregon's. I think the team they match up best against is Oregon, because I think Notre Dame can win that game in the trenches for the most part. And no, I don't love the idea of Kayvon Thibodeau, but I feel like you can do some things to protect yourself against him. And I think there are some advantages that Notre Dame has in the past game against Oregon. And Oregon's offense doesn't scare me as much as Ohio State, Oklahoma, or Alabama. And I know Oklahoma's not in the top 4 now, but I think they will be. So that's kind of how I look at that one. And then Kevon McPherson also asked, will Philip Riley and Ryan Barnes see the field this year? I can't believe they haven't. And I don't know what would get them on the field now if they haven't already played. It's a mystery to me. I really don't understand why they haven't played, especially over – I mean, I'm not saying Clarence Lewis should get benched. I'm not saying that at all. I think Clarence needs to play better. I think Clarence would admit that. Clarence is a sophomore, and he's done some good things too. Ramon Henderson just hasn't been good. And I don't quite understand that one. Josh Miller says, is Brian Kelly a good game day coach? My opinion as an ex-coach is that he is not. We constantly use timeouts in spots we shouldn't. He also seems very emotional on the sidelines, and I don't like that. Let me address these a couple at a time. Number one, I don't think Brian Kelly's a great game day coach. I think he's just kind of okay. He's solid. He has his moments where he makes some really boneheaded decisions, as we talked about earlier with the 2-point conversions. I think the problem I have with Brian Kelly emotionally is he tends to either be one extreme or the other. He's either way too calm and almost to the point of being disengaged, or he's losing his mind. And that is strange. And I don't know how I would handle that as a player. Like, okay, sometimes coach is just like quiet and calm and chill. And then the next minute coach is ready to, like, ball me up and throw me under the, the bleachers. So I don't think he's a great game day coach. I just, and it's more about decision making for me. He's not a bad game day coach. I think sometimes he, the big thing to me too is on game day, I just don't feel like he has that ability to push the buttons to get teams to play with that little extra emotion, which is partly the in-week process. And then the other part too is I hate his unwillingness to really go pedal to the metal. It drives me nuts. Absolutely drives me nuts. We can get down here some more. Beer Belly said he is headed to Charlottesville tomorrow morning. Go Irish. Love it. Love it. Chad Williams says Drew Allers, Josh Allen 2.0. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm not saying he's going to be a top 10 pick or, potential MVP in the NFL. I'm just saying body type, skill set wise. Yes. Yes. Josh Allen's a better athlete, but yes, very, very similar. AJ says, I've been critical of Bray's recruiting approach during his tenure and was often told by Bray defenders that he has to recruit that way because Notre Dame is not a basketball school. I always felt they were capable of signing 15 to 20 classes, and now they have. People are singing his praises for this class. I'm excited about it, but also frustrated it took so long. Yeah, I get you. I don't think Bray's ever going to do it every year because of the way that he recruits. As Tom Noy explained, he's not going to try to over-recruit guys. I don't love that idea, but, it is what it is. It's just – I feel like sometimes he's got a little bit of Brian Kelly in him, in that he is late to figure out mistakes, or to realize the coaching staff isn't getting it done, and it's not until things kind of fall apart that he makes those changes. I think that's been a little bit of a challenge. Michael Berhone, do you think if James Franklin leaves Penn State, do you try hard to flip Nicholas Singleton, or has that ship sailed? No, I think they would try. I just, I think they would try. I don't know if it'll work or not. I just think it depends on who they hire. Penn State hires. If Penn State just promotes the offensive coordinator, the defensive coordinator, I think most of those kids will stay. It just depends on if they go outside the program, then that's when I think you could start to see kids leave. But for me, I don't know what they're going to do. If it was my decision, I'd be recruiting Drew Aller. I've said this before. I would try and recruit Drew Aller. I would try and recruit Nicholas Singleton. I would try and recruit Caden Saunders, and I would try and recruit Drew Shelton. All 4 offensive players, I would be all over them. Like now, not waiting till James Franklin leaves. I'd be on him now. Let me get down here. All right, Rob Dinoff says he is sticking with his upset special double, Baylor over Oklahoma and washes it over Oregon. Go Irish. That would be certainly big for Notre Dame. They would move up at least 2 spots in the rankings this week. That would be at some point in time this week. I think it's got to happen this week. If they don't jump up a spot or 2 this week, I just don't know if it's going to be in the cards the next 2 weeks. So they're going to need some help this weekend. Tyler Almani, as an independent, what process would you use to help create the Notre Dame schedule? I think for me, I would kind of I've talked about this in the past. Obviously, you have your normals. USC is a normal, Navy is a normal. There's a couple other teams I'd like to see back on the schedule. I think Purdue should always be on the schedule. I don't like the fact that Purdue was taken off. I think that's something that they should always do. I think after that, I've always felt like, I always want to play an academic school, right? But I don't think it has to be Stanford all the time. I always want to play. I would like to kind of always have. Then you've got that 4. Then you've got your 5 ACC games. I'm writing this down as we go. You got your 5 ACC games, right? What I would try to do with the ACC is I would try to create sort of hey, we'd like to have sort of a rotating rivalry, right? We'd like to have either Pitt, Miami, or Florida State or Boston College on the schedule. Or no, I'd go about this way. Is there any way we can kind of have, we either have Pitt or BC as one game, or Miami, Florida State as one game, and then kind of have that be part of my 2? If I was able to do that as part of the negotiation, I would like to do that. So USC, Navy, Purdue, an academic school, and I would like to have a rotation of Stanford, Northwestern, teams like that, kind of rotating in. And then after that, you've got 3 left. You've got to get a couple gimme. You have to have a gimme right in there. And then the other thing that I would do is I would like to have sort of a rotation of SEC and Big 12 schools and Pac-12 schools. So you've got those 3 there, and you kind of would rotate them. You try to get home and homes with teams from those leagues, right? And I think you'd have probably 2 spots in there. Now, if you don't want to do Purdue, then I think what I would like to have is a rotation of 2 years of playing Big Ten schools. I would like to see something like that where, you're not playing a bunch of Big Ten teams, but you just kind of have a bunch of 2 and 2. So I would like to play at least 4 Power 5 teams a year. The Pac-12 is not as important to me because you already have USC on there. But the SEC and the Big 12, some kind of rotation where you're playing more teams from those leagues is something that interests me. But at the same time, you also have to make sure that you're not getting your schedule to be too challenging. So you have to really think like, okay, we've got, Clemson and we've got USC and we happen to have, pick a good ACC team because your schedule's determined. All right, so we can't play Alabama and Oklahoma from, so, okay, we're going to play Oklahoma as part of our Big 12 that year. So, SEC, let's go try and get, an SEC team that's Kentucky, Tennessee. If one of them, somebody that's a little bit down, if you can. But then also it could also come from part of your academic thing is is Vanderbilt. So if you schedule a home and home with Vanderbilt or just a couple games with Vanderbilt, maybe one's neutral field, one's at your place, that would check the academic one for that year. So that's kind of the thought process. I kind of went a little bit all over, but and then part of that is when you look at who do you schedule for the Pac-12, who you schedule for the Big 12, you start looking at, okay, we'd really like to get into the Dallas area, so let's play TCU, and we'll play them at our place, and then the next year we won't, if they're willing, we'll play them in Dallas, or if they want to play at their place, that's fine. But you try to get some of those games in Dallas, okay, I want to play UCLA, right? So yeah, we'll play USC and UCLA one year just to get two shots at, playing the LA teams. Once you get them at home, the other one you get out there. Getting down into, okay, we're going to play this SEC team, but if they really want to play us, then they'll come to our place. But then when we go down there, we'll try to play at Mercedes-Benz or something like that. Or if you just, again, there's also value there. But trying to get into places where you're getting into parts of the country that you really want to have a strong recruiting foothold is also part of what goes into that schedule as well. Like, I don't know if like playing Oregon, for example, would be good for football, but I don't know what it does for Notre Dame's recruiting. I don't think beating Oregon would necessarily move the needle with West Coast kids a ton. And I don't think you necessarily need to get into Oregon. Washington might be a little bit more advantageous for that because there seems to be more and more kids coming out of Washington. So you think about that, like maybe getting out and playing in Seattle would allow you to make sure that you got an even better chance every year with the Tobias Merriweather type of kids. And that's kind of how I would look at it. I'm going to try to get to a couple more here. Andrew Sokolowski took my wife, new wife, correct, to her first game against North Carolina. Kyron scored his 90-plus yard run in our corner of the end zone. Afterward, my wife looked at me and said, that made the whole trip worth it. That is awesome. That is really good. I love that story. Love that story. Domer TX22, I watched a few of Virginia games last year and thought Armstrong had upside, but he was really inaccurate. How surprised you at Armstrong's year to date so far? Very shocked. And he's still not super accurate, Domer. He's really not. It's just he makes a lot of plays. He makes a lot of plays off schedule. I did not see this coming. Now, part of it's they have really good scheme, and he's really improved as a decision maker. That's the big jump for me is his timing and his decision making is taking a big jump. He gets the ball out on time, but he's still not super accurate. And that's why I feel like the pass rush against him is so important. Really, really important. Michael Brahoni says, how do I contact you for more info on the recruiting position that I asked you about? I will have a post coming out on Monday where it'll explain the position, what I'm looking for, what the requirements are, what the responsibilities are. And there'll be a link in there. If you're interested, what you do is just fill out that link and I'll get your email, your phone number, and then I have some questions that I'll be asking people and you can reach out that way. That's how you can do it, Michael. Definitely go through it that way. But that'll come out on Monday. Let's get to a few here. Caleb Collins, most unacceptable moment was 2015 Stanford ending. Yes, that was a bad one. Dan Ferry, do you think Gundy is a good coach? That's Mike Gundy at Oklahoma State. He's solid. He's a solid coach. He's had relatively consistent success. Is he a great coach? No. Is he a good coach? Absolutely. I don't think you can have the sustained success he's had at a place like Oklahoma State if you're not a good coach, right? Because I don't think it's you're great or you stink. I don't think that. I think there's there's great, there's pretty darn good, there's it's just kind of average, there's not very good, and then there's bad, right? There's all types of degrees in between. Mike Gundy at Oklahoma State, he's been there since 2015, right? So that is 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. He's in his 17th year there. He's gone 145 and 68. In those 17 seasons, he's had one losing season, and that was his first year. He's had at least a winning record every year. And when I say winning record, I'm not no 6-6s, no 6-6s where you lose the bowl game. He's been at least 7-6 every year. He's won 9 games twice. He's won 8 games 4 now because of this year. He's won 10 games 4 times. He's won 11 games once. He's won 12 games once. They finished ranked in the top 25 9 times in 17 years, which isn't great. They'll finish in the top 25 this year, most likely. But it's good, especially at a place like Oklahoma State. So, yeah, I think he's a good football coach. It's not great, but he's good. He's a good football coach. Any word on why Spindler's not playing? No clue. It's the strangest thing to me. Strangest thing. I do not understand it. John Rich says, I failed retirement and went back to work full-time a month ago. So I can only catch IB sporadically during the day. Love it when I can. Keep up the great work and go Irish. Well, I'm sorry that you failed at retirement, John. And I don't know if you had to go back to work or if you choose to go back to work because you couldn't figure something else to do, which I get that. Some people just need to work. I don't know if I'll ever be able to retire. I like to work and I like to be busy. So I don't know how that'll go, but we're sorry we don't get to see you as much, but I do appreciate you being here when you can, John. I mean, it means a lot to us that you can be here when you can. Zacho says BK hasn't been as purple since the yoga, though, which has been nice. He got purple a couple times this year, but that doesn't bother me. I mean, that's more about his DNA than it is about anything else. I mean, I've seen coaches go off way more than Brian Kelly did. And that day, he gets a bad rap for that South Florida day. That was a weird freaking day. You're sitting in the locker room for like 3 hours. I get him losing it a little bit. I do. Michael Roediger says, I feel like his emotions have been better this year, especially when he's got in Jack Cohn's face, but not completely freak out. Well, I guess it depends on what the TV shows. I feel like the TV doesn't show as many of the Brian Kelly freak out moments this year. But again, I don't – it's just the constant like up and down for me. It's a little strange. Scott Yerbick's D-Rock says, I have to agree with Brian's assessment on BK. Scott Yerbick says, your perspective on BK is spot on. At times, he looks like he's not paying attention. Then he is screaming at a kid, and for what reason, we have no idea. Show less BK on TV. Yep. Joseph Steve says, it seems like there's an opportunity to play someone else out west instead of Stanford. I like Oregon. Any thoughts? I talked a little bit about Oregon earlier. I don't know what playing Oregon necessarily does for you as a program other than just giving you a tough game, which Notre Dame doesn't seem to have an issue with that. I'd love to play UCLA. I think Washington would make more sense to me than Oregon for recruiting purposes. I would, just kind of look. I wouldn't mind playing Colorado. I feel like you could have a home and home, and it would kind of you could play up the whole, the little mini rivalry you had with them back in the early 90s. But, but it doesn't do a lot for you recruiting wise. And that's why I always try to look at it. But there's not a ton of Pac-12 teams I care about playing. Washington would be one. UCLA would be one. Stanford, Stanford to me, I don't care about playing them every year. I wouldn't mind saying, okay, we're going to play Stanford, 6 out of 10 years, and we're going to go 2 Stanford, 2 somebody else from the Pac-12, 2 Stanford, 2 somebody else from the Pac-12, and 2 of Stanford. So then in 10 years, you've played them, 6 times out of 10, and then you could figure out ways to make it the next 10 years to kind of. So then you maybe go 4 in a row Stanford because you hit that next 10-year period or however you want to do it. I mean, there's all types of different things you could do, or you could do it where, it's Stanford academic school, Vanderbilt, Stanford, Northwestern, Stanford, Rice, something like that. Those are things that I would look into doing. But Oregon doesn't necessarily fire me up. I think it'd be a good football game, but I try to look at other, geographics, recruiting, things like that. And I feel like Oregon would help you recruit California, but so would, playing at the Rose Bowl against UCLA, I think would have that same approach. John Rich says, I am in the Cleveland area and see all the Drew Aller news. If Penn State has a change, I'd be all over him like a bum on a ham sandwich. That is great. And I completely agree with you, John. I completely agree with you. The Sunset Kid says, Brian, do you think BK will have a say in his successor? Thanks for the great job on helping me get through Friday. You are welcome. Do I think he'll have a say? Yes. Do I think he'll be the primary decision maker? No. Unless the person he wants is also the person the AD wants. That would be the exception. Joseph Salvatore says, I'm late here. I was super surprised by Emil Wagner. Kind of like it. Low floor, high ceiling takes on the offensive line are great. Best position to take some risk, in my opinion. Hope he reaches his ceiling. Yes, agree with your assessment, Joseph, but I would put the caveat that you can't only recruit those kind of guys because they do have a lower success rate. So if you're recruiting 4 of those guys every year, you're going to end up with offensive lines where just one year you just happen to miss out on them and your offensive line's a struggle. Josh Miller says, thank you for answering my question. I'm new to the podcast game, but I love it. Lifelong fan of Notre Dame, but know more about the team than I ever had thanks to you guys. You are quite welcome, and we enjoy doing it very, very much. Last few before we get out of here. Christopher Jenkins says, Brian, do you think Virginia will make a strategic decision to not play Armstrong since the Notre Dame game doesn't mean much for them, but their next 2 ACC games are significant towards winning the Coastal? I have talked about this last week, Christopher. I think that they should strongly consider that. I do. And when you look at what Virginia has up next, their next couple games are going to be challenges, and you're going to need him fully healthy. They've got Pitt at Pitt next week and then home against Virginia Tech. You're not beating either one of those teams if Brennan Armstrong's not healthy. He's already banged up. He's got the rib issue. You gave him a week to heal last week. I don't know if I want him facing against Notre Dame's pass rush. I don't know if I want him getting slammed in the ground 2-3 times by Isaiah Foskey and Jason Adamiola and Kurt Heinisch and Myron Tungavaloa. I wouldn't be a big fan of that at all. I would strongly consider that. Now, part of it is, look, you're not giving your team the best chance to win this weekend, and you're always trying to win every game. But to your point, they're not playing for the playoff, right? They're out of that. So it's not like beating Notre Dame does anything for them other than, pride of beating a top 10 team, which is important. But they're still trying to play for a conference championship. And this is a year where you get into the ACC title game, the Coastal's going to have a much better shot of winning it than they have in a long time since Clemson's been there. So, yeah, I think they have to at least seriously think about that, Christopher. And part of it's going to be how he's feeling. If he's fine, if he's good to go, then you play him. But if he's still sore and he can't be 100%, then I personally would strongly consider sitting him. The Sunset Kid, I would like to do away with the ACC 5-game schedule. I would. I love the ACC schedule. I really do. It makes overall scheduling easier. It gets you into a region of the country that you really want and need to get into. And there's a lot of like-minded schools that you get to play on a consistent basis. I like it. I would have probably negotiated for more regulars. I want to see Miami more. I want to see, Pitt more. I want to see BC more. Some of your traditional rivals from the past that are in the ACC, I would have tried to, work them into the schedule more. But the way that they do it, I don't, I would have done it differently, but I don't want to not have the ACC games. Panthers, Lion. Should Notre Dame schedule an SEC team to prove independent conference is relevant with BYU and Liberty being consistent? They do that already. They've played Georgia twice in the last 5 years. They've played Vanderbilt. They've played LSU in bowl games. They've played several SEC schools in recent seasons. So and they've got Alabama already on the schedule. They have Texas A&M already on the schedule. Notre Dame has played. They have Arkansas. They would have played Arkansas last year if not for COVID. They have Arkansas on the schedule. So Notre Dame playing SEC teams is already happening. Has been happening for several years now. So, yeah. So I don't know. I don't think Notre Dame cares about proving that the independent conference is relevant. It's not a conference. Number one, independent. It's not the independent conference. It's here's a bunch of independent schools. That's it. It's no conference. They don't play each other. There's no championship. They're not a conference. It's not relevant because it's always changing because teams are going independent while they're getting ready to go over here. Notre Dame's focused on Notre Dame. They don't care what's going on at Liberty and BYU and other teams like that, especially since isn't BYU leaving the independent soon? I believe they are. Tommy Gunn says, do you think the committee is ready to move to a Power 4 instead of 5 after Texas and Oklahoma move? There isn't going to be a flagship Big 12 team. I don't think the committee is ready for that. I think it just depends on what moves the Big 12 makes. I think they made some good moves. I think they're going to have to do some more. But no, they'll still be a Power 5. You have to let it play out, right? I mean, so maybe this opens up an opportunity for Oklahoma State to take a jump as a program, or TCU or Baylor or something like that, and they become, maybe Cincinnati benefits from being in a Power Five, and they take that next leap as a program. I mean, there's all types of things that can make it a much better league that makes it relevant again. And look, you can't tell me that the Big 12 without those two teams would be much worse than the ACC or the Pac-12 right now. So no, I don't. They're going to have to make some changes. They're going to have to do some things to become more attractive, but I don't think they're going to lose being a Power Five. The only way that they would not be part of the Power Five is if they just cease to exist as a conference, which is possible. Tara Trixie says, would love Notre Dame in Seattle again. Yeah, and I've never been to Seattle, and I've never been to that stadium, which would be kind of cool to see that, and it's been some big games there. TJ0311, I remember taking my wife to USC in 2019. She was amazed by the people and how amazing everyone was, accepting of us, mixed race couple, and celebrating Notre Dame, church, grotto, and kindness. Yeah, it's a story that a lot of people say about Notre Dame. I mean, I've heard fans from all over the country say, I was really surprised at how Notre Dame fans acted and how they were welcoming of us and all that kind of stuff. You almost always get. The only people that don't say that are Michigan fans, and that's because they're the problem. Gus Webb says, my first home game will be next week against Georgia Tech. And if I heard you right, that you won't be there, are there any places you would suggest for food? Well, there's normal, typical restaurants. It just depends on what kind of food you're looking for. If you're looking for Mexican, there's a place called Salsa's nearby. That's pretty good. Service is very, very inconsistent, which is why we stopped going, but the food's good. There's my favorite pizza place is called Polito's. That's really good. There's a Mission Barbecue in town. A lot of people go to LaSalle Grill. I've never been. My favorite Italian place is Simonini Grill, which is really good. Small, so you usually have to get reservations because there's not a lot of seating. But my wife and I go there every year for our anniversary, and then other times when we can. But yeah, it's just like places like that. I don't know if there's like a lot of great. There's the original Pancake House that's near campus. It's got pretty good breakfast, but I don't really get out and eat a lot in the South Bend area, to be honest with you. Chief Brody says, I low-key love USC like a weird second team. It's the jerseys. That's what it is, Chief. It's the jerseys and the fact that they play in the Rose Bowl. It's just, where do they play? Pasadena, Rose Bowl, sweet jerseys. I get it. Ron Tuck says, Brian, what time is the show going to be Wednesday? It's going to be at 12:30 like normal. We're going to, Vince will be on for an hour, and then I'm going to try to get a couple other people to be on, so we can extend it a little bit and have some fun and get more and more people involved in it. So it'll start at 12:30 like normal. Let's see here. Zach O says Rocco's Pizza is so good, but so packed always. It is good. It definitely is good. I personally like Polito's even better, but Rocco's is good too. And Rocco's has a lot of like ambiance. Like there's a lot of like Notre Dame photos and former coaches in there and stuff like that. So, Sparkling Swan, Brian, what are your sources saying about Styles committing Notre Dame? Seems like he's visited the school a lot. They're not saying he's going to commit to Notre Dame, just that they like where they're at, but they also know they need to close. They got to close. Chris Belts, what bowl you thinking for the Irish? I'm in Arizona and would love to see them come to Arizona again for Fiesta. It's Fiesta or Peach. I mean, to me, as long as Notre Dame wins out, those are the two options, right? Fiesta or Peach. I think most people assume it's going to be the Peach. I think the Fiesta is a little bit of a better chance than some do. Some people think, but a part of it's just going to depend on how the rest of the season pans out and who's playing where, and there's still a lot of football to be played, but it's going to be either Fiesta or Peach as long as Notre Dame wins out, in my opinion. Sean Stewart says, what do you think of Joel Klatt's take on college football expansion? I don't remember. I know he's tweeted things about it. I haven't quite seen it, Sean. If you can remind me of what his stance is. I have a very strong take on what college football expansion should be. I don't know what, I don't know what his is specifically. I know he's had a couple bad takes lately that I've pushed back on, but I'm not quite sure what what his is. So before we wrap up, because there's only one more question left, if you could get in kind of what his take is, I'll answer it. D-Rock Irish says, I would be surprised if Brendan Armstrong plays. I think if he does, maybe a couple token series to get the offense rolling. Also, I think the televised coverage was based on Armstrong playing or not. Yeah, I think so. And that's kind of why I think I think he's going to play, is because I think they probably got some word that they feel good about him being able to play. I don't really know if that's true or not. All right. Shannon Hyduck says, Brian, the poster behind you, what game is that? Can you tell on the scoreboard? Every time I watch the show, I wonder what game that is. It's Notre Dame Purdue. Let me see. Yeah, it's Notre Dame Purdue. And I'm trying to look down. I believe it's from the 2012 season because it still has grass, and I see Zeke Mott on it. So I'm pretty sure it's from the 2012 season. But yeah, that's Notre Dame Purdue. You can actually see it, the scoreboard up there. It's got a little bit of a glare right here, but it's Notre Dame Purdue. So it says it on the scoreboard. All right. Let me get down to a couple more here. All right. I think that is going to be it. Oh, Michael Rudiger says, what's your take on expansion? So I have a long piece on this, and I've done a podcast on this, so I'm not going to get into the whole thing again, but I'll give you just a brief view of it. I think that, number one, I do one of two things. You can keep the current bowl set up, or I would change it. It's just me, and I would have the Pac-12 in the Rose Bowl, and I put the Big Ten in the Cotton Bowl. And then I would, have the 6 major bowls. So it's Rose, Peach, Cotton, Orange, Sugar, Fiesta. I would have the 5 Power 5 teams would all have their own bowl that the winner gets. Then the best group of 5 team would get the 6th one, and whichever one that would be. So Peach is the one I'm kind of thinking of. And then so the committee does the rankings like they do now. The conference winners get locked into those bowl games, because I feel like that would be great for the regular season. I think it would be great for reestablishing importance for the bowl game. So it's the bowl games. And so the committee comes out with rankings every week, but the rankings they make after the conference championship games are just about slotting for the bowl games. So you have the 6 conference champs, and then essentially the highest ranked, so the lowest ranked conference winner or group of 5 team plays against the highest ranked non-conference winner. So in Notre Dame's case, that may be Notre Dame a lot of years. And then you just kind of, like normal seeding, if a conference winner is ranked 12th, they would play against the highest ranked team. Then it's basically taking the next, of the non-conference winners, you just take the highest ranked by the committee. So just whatever the rankings are for the committee, you slot them, and then you slot them based on highest seed gets lowest of that group. And so if there'd be 6, your next 6 highest ranked teams that didn't win their conference, and then you match them up in that sort of sliding matchup. And then what I think that does is I think that if you look at how that would work out, so you'd have the conference winners. Normally the conference winners are teams that are going to be ranked in the top 4 a lot of times. But then what you have is you then have an opportunity to say, okay, those teams have their 4, right? They go out and win, they look good, they're in it, all those kind of things. And then you say, okay, well, now the 5 team, the 6 team, the 7 team, maybe even the 8 team still have an outside shot at getting in, but they're not technically in the playoff because they haven't earned that right. Okay, so then what you would do is you would play those games out, and then after the games are played, the committee that would then rank the top 4 after that. So one year, for example, Notre Dame was ranked 3rd, and they would have played, I think it was 18. They would have played the number 7 or 8 or 9 team that year. And then 5 Georgia and 6 Ohio State would have played in a bowl game, the way that the seeding worked out. Well, they're going to be sitting there praying that Notre Dame gets knocked off. They're going to be praying that Oklahoma gets knocked off. They're going to be praying that the number 2 team gets knocked off because they still have a chance to play. Or let's say team number 4, Oklahoma, goes out in the Fiesta Bowl and they barely beat, a team that's okay. And then Georgia or Ohio State plays each other at 5 and 6, and they blast it. Now all of a sudden your resume looks better. You can jump that other team. So I feel like that would create way more excitement. It would create a lot of excitement in the bowl games again. And it gives us more. See, I think the thing about it too is it gives us more metrics against each other, conferences against each other. So you have a much better sense of how good the conferences are. I mean, if there's 3 SEC teams in that top 12 and they all go out there and whoop people, then okay, well, the SEC is the best conference. Let them play for a championship, right? But I feel like it would be a much better system that keeps the integrity of the regular season, adds value to the bowl season, and then you pick your 4 from there and have your championship start 10 days later is kind of how I would do it. All right. Jay Montalbano, do you ever see a situation where Notre Dame is forced to join a conference? If so, which conference? I could see a situation where that happens. I hope it doesn't. And if it would, it's the ACC. I mean, literally until 2035, they're obligated to join the ACC. And the only other thing I would like to see them do is start their own. If they're not going to join the ACC, start their own. Sean Stewart, the top 2 teams in the country have – this is Joe Klatt's philosophy or proposal. The top 2 teams in the country have first-round buys, and he said up to 14 teams, and they get home field advantage, more like an NFL system. I think that's terrible. I don't understand why people are so obsessed with trying to make college football like the NFL. I do not understand that, and I really don't get it. And I don't like that. I've heard Joel Klatt talk about, or maybe it wasn't him, but I've heard people talk about that. I hate it. I hate the idea of it looking like the NFL. I don't want to see a 9-7, now 9-8 team make the playoff. It's one of the reasons I don't watch the NFL. I don't like parity. I like excellence. I don't understand why. Like Joel Klatt said something the other day, which was a horrible idea. He said, "How about putting a salary cap on teams so that way the best teams can't pay coaches?" That's a stupid idea. Like that's just one of the so you're going to punish the teams that are investing in their program, that are actually putting the resources and making a commitment to being excellent. You're going to punish them so that these teams that aren't willing or able to do it can take up. I think that's a terrible idea. It's completely un-American. It's completely let's tear down the best instead of building up the worst. If you want to do things to try to help build up the lowers, that's fine. But don't do so at the expense of tearing down the people at the top. That's a terrible idea. And I think trying to create an NFL-style system in college football is dumb. We already have the NFL. If you like the NFL playoff format, then watch the NFL playoff format. This is college football. The reality is that you need to find a way to create a system that keeps the integrity of the regular season. College football has the best regular season in sports, hands down, the best. What they don't have is the best postseason. You need to find a way to make the postseason matter and the regular season matter and still preserve the one unique thing about college football, which is the bowl system. And I think there are smart ways that can make a lot of money that can make all those things great. You have the regular season still great. It still matters. The bowls matter again, and you have a playoff. I think if you do that, that's the best way to do it. I don't think they're going to do it, but that to me is the best way to do it, in my opinion. So that's how I would do it. But I don't know why people like Joel Klatt are obsessed with just mimicking the NFL. There's 32 teams in the NFL, right? There's 130 in college football. No matter how you do that, there's going to be people complaining. And going to an NFL style system is it's just pointless. I hate it. I don't understand why people are trying to repeat what the NFL does. It's a different animal, different entity, different makeup. Everything is different. And I don't get it. I don't like it. I wouldn't do it. And that's how that would be my proposal. So anyway, that's going to be it for today's show. I appreciate everybody being part of the show. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell before you leave. Give us a 5-star review if you're listening via podcast. Sign up for the message boards. I'm going to put the link in there one more time if you're interested in signing up. Would love it if you all came over. Help us continue to grow. Help us continue to expand, and just really help us to keep making this Irish Breakdown community better and better and better. Just put the sign up thing at the bottom. You can sign up there. Thanks for all the questions. Thanks for the super chats. We will be after the show tomorrow. Make sure you hit the notification bell, because when we kind of have it figured out when we're going to be able to do the post-game show, we'll put it on. Well, obviously we'll set it up. We'll probably give about 20, 30 minutes notice, and then you'll get the notification saying we're going to do it. So we'll have that tomorrow night after the game. So enjoy the game. Check out irishbreakdown.com. Everybody have a great rest of your day, and we'll talk to you again very, very soon.